The city receiving 25% this year and 30% revenue sharing from LC parking permit funds when applied to city taxpayers gives a very wrong appearance of duplicative taxation. Regarding the argument that other universities like BSU, U of I have similar agreements, I would argue, first, we do not live in Ada or Latah counties. LC campus enrollment is not even comparable. The campus is not comparable. These massive campuses have expensive street parking within their control. Second, availability of parking is not a problem at LC, in my opinion. Third, and most importantly, and to be an advocate for students, LC tailors to the local community, low-income, working, and first-generation students, many of whom I know personally live here and utilize the street parking option to save money. There are other arguments I believe are strong on this issue, but I will simply suggest that you consider affirming a much-needed nod to the taxpayers of our city by making a simple addition to Resolution 2025-40 to exclude Nez Perce County taxpayers from street side parking enforcement as outlined in the agreement. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Mayor Johnson and the City Council. My name is Kathy Johnson. I am a Lewiston resident, and I am on the board of the Congregational Presbyterian Church located at 709 6th Street and 609 8th Avenue. I'm here to address Resolution 2025-40 regarding the parking agreement between LCSC and the City of Lewiston. First, I would like to say that the church highly values its neighborly relationship with the college. Last Friday morning, we first became aware of this resolution, which will establish private LCSC parking on the streets abutting our church and other houses in the neighborhood. We were not notified either verbally or in written form that this parking plan with the city was being considered. So noting that it is already an action item on tonight's agenda, I feel like we are late to the party out of no fault of our own. My first question is, why is this even being considered? Does the college need more parking? Parking lots at 11th Avenue and 4th Street are rarely used and never full. Do we really need to eliminate city street parking when the college still has these viable options? This neighborhood is very short on public parking due to the number of streets already participating in the current residential parking permit program. So adding 7th Avenue from 4th Street to 6th Street, adding 6th Street from 7th Avenue to 11th Avenue, and portions of 8th and 9th Avenue to the new parking permit required program with the college will further restrict public access to the neighborhood throughout the week. It will leave the east side of 6th Street for one block in front of our church, as well as the north side of 8th Avenue for one block next to the church, as the only free public parking in that area. Those two sections will become the go-to parking for anyone who does not wish to or cannot afford to purchase a permit. The map identifies 123 parking spots along those streets that will be transferred to college permit parking and thus unavailable to the citizens of Lewiston and anyone else wishing to park in this section of Normal Hill on Monday through Friday from 7 a.m. to 5 p.m. at a cost of $95 per permit with 123 spaces. 25% of the revenue going to the city, that would be about $2,900. So is the city willing to eliminate 123 public parking spots on our city streets for less than $3,000? This program has been compared to the University of Idaho City of Moscow agreement. But if you look closely, the streets involved in that program are on the U of I campus and do not affect residential neighborhoods. Here in Lewiston, 7th Avenue and 6th Street are not on campus, but rather they're neighborhood streets for all of our citizens. So in conclusion, I would respectfully ask the council to consider the ramifications of this parking permit program on the neighborhood of Normal Hill in lieu of the already current lack of available parking due to the residential parking program. Carefully weigh the loss of the free public parking versus the minimal revenue it will produce, and consider what is best for all of the citizens of Lewiston. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Hello, thank you, welcome. I'm not good at public speaking, so excuse me. Okay, thank you. I'm also comments on resolution 2025-40. I, Marissa Bell, am a non-traditional student at LC State, and so I do not live on campus. In order to go to class, I leave my place of work, I drive to campus, I park, and I walk to class, sometimes multiple times a day. I pay $95 for a parking service. As it is a commodity I use quite often, this provides me with several services, such as assistance from campus safety if I ever get locked out of my car. I did not know previously that these sections were not part of campus jurisdiction. I should have realized this as the number of cars haphazardly and illegally parked either across a crosswalk or within the dangerous distance of a stop sign was frankly astronomical. It is extremely difficult for the services that I pay for to be rendered when the campus has no control over the streets so closely married to its daily operations. I am often feeling like I'm playing Frogger from behind a car as I attempt to cross the street just to go to class, or craning my neck to see over cars parked right underneath a stop sign when I'm leaving campus. Sorry. The campus services currently cannot add lines for organized and safe parking along the street. They have no ability to add much needed crosswalks, and any issues regarding the cars parked in those areas have to be handled by local police, which is a poor use of city funds. Campus security would be the ones to handle any issues. I pay for a service, and I would personally like those services to be able to be effectively fulfilled by LC State by allowing this parking agreement. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Good evening. My name is Matt Ivins from here in Lewiston. I've lived here for about 35 years. My concern is not the parking. I'm concerned about the streets and the weeds, the businesses in town that don't take care of their storefronts. I know we're required to put in new sidewalks and take care of the fronts of your businesses when a person opens up the business. But then there's no enforcement to make those businesses take care of their storefronts after that. Or where is the city at in taking care of the weed problems from the sidewalk to the street? If you drive down Juniper Drive to Nez Perce Drive by the new hotels, I'm not kidding, there's a weed, it's taller than I am, and it's been there for months and months. I saw the mayor at the parade, and there's weeds right alongside the road. I mean, where is the pride in our city? We have people that come to town. My son lives in Boise now, and he was commenting this last week when he was up here that it has really went downhill. And frankly, I'm tired of it. I mean, we need to have some pride in this town and clean things up. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Welcome, Mark.
Mark Edelblut. I know what he's talking about, the weeds, because all over this town, there's weeds that grow where the sidewalk meets the street. And where I live, I was killing them there along that retaining wall that's along 18th, because it's just weeds are this tall growing up right between the road and the wall there. But somebody stole, I had 10 gallons of diesel that somebody stole out of my garage thinking it was gas. So hopefully that. But anyway, what I came down here to talk about water, but also since we're talking about just general stuff, I want to say I think this is maybe the third year now that Burt Lipp swimming pool. Am I right or wrong? Is this the third year where that pool hasn't been functioning? Now, here's what gets me is the kids that I grew up in that neighborhood. I walked to that swimming pool every day in the summertime, and that's where the kids went, and which helps keep a lot of high-risk kids out of trouble. And so they're not going to go over to Clarkson to the over there to the, whatever they call it over there, the swimming pool, whatever it's called, or they're not gonna go up in the orchards to that pool. These are kids that are probably parents that, a lot of those kids only have one parent. I mean, when I grew up, that's, a lot of that, the flats down there, that's what it was one parents. But anyway, we can go up and, in my opinion, flush 400,000 down the toilet on a 10th and Burl roundabout, but we can't get that swimming pool going. And I know that we have the technology to figure out where the hell the damn thing's leaking and fix it and get that thing going, so some of these kids that would have to just walk to the pool like I did when I was growing up will have a place to go in the summertime, maybe keep them out of trouble.
Thank you, Mark.
Thank you.
Welcome, Bob.
Thank you. I'm Bob Blakey, and I'm a candidate for City Council. I'm here to introduce myself and thank you for the opportunity for allowing me time to come to the mic. I did not come up here planning on talking about parking regulations on Normal Hill, but I'm old enough to remember 20 years ago or so, this was an issue that came before the council, long before my time on the council, but I was a trustee at Congo Pres Church at that time, and the city, in cooperation with LCSC, was implemented and did actually implement a permit system. I didn't plan on talking about it, but my memory got jogged today about that. And if I remember right, it worked for a little while and then it just disappeared. But the one thing that was different between that program and the program that you are suggesting right now is homeowners were giving a free permit, and they were given a second permit so that if they had an extra vehicle, they were allowed to use the street in front of their homes without basically paying a fee. The church itself was given some extra permits that they would then give to churchgoers if they were going to park in front of the church during operating hours and not use the parking lot. So I would encourage you to dig deep, find those minutes from, God, it's got to be 20 years ago when this was a hot topic back then, and now history repeats itself.
Bob.
Hello, my name is Brennan Leafty. I am a resident of Lewiston. I am currently running a candidate for city council, and so I don't have a whole lot to say right now about the issues we are discussing today. I was just invited to come up here and talk, and so I'd like to just offer a very short introduction. I am 22 years old. I have lived in Lewiston since about April 2023, and I was or April 2022, I think, and I was I formerly ran for city council back in 2023. I'm looking to run again. My primary issues are finding something to do about the many taxation issues that our citizens are concerned with, many of the property issues that they are concerned with, and I do not have former experience in municipal affairs, but I would like to still throw my hat in the ring to see what I can do to give back to a community that has done great things for me. If any citizens are interested in getting to know more or sharing their issues with me, I can be reached at my campaign email address, which is leafdyforlewiston@gmail.com, or I can be reached at my Facebook page, Brennan Leafdy for Lewiston. And I would be happy to get to know more citizens from here and see what I can do to help them. And I'm happy for any support anyone is willing to give me. And I would like to say that I appreciate everyone else who is running too. I'd like us all to work together to make our city better. Thank you.
Thank you.
Brandon.
Thank you.
Captain Sloan. picking on you for
Well,
walking up to them.
I was dealing with some dispatch issues, and then I'm like, oh, what did I walk into? So,
We'll wait here just a few more seconds, see if there's anyone else that would like to speak at this time. We are going to have a public hearing here shortly too, where we'll talk about the fees. So when that time comes, you'll have another 3 minutes to share your views with us. So
I'll take this 3 minutes. It seems less intense. I'm sorry I was late as finishing up work, but I'm here. I did not catch what I'm Celeste. Oh, now I'm catching it. Celeste, I'm here actually, Trent and I have been talking and kind of just trying to decide the best way to go about what we believe and what we think. So I'm here to just echo what my partner here and I have been discussing.
your hometown Lewiston, just for the record.
Pardon me?
Lewiston?
Yes, I live in Lewiston.
Thank you.
Yes, and so I'm just here to echo that, and just what you said, Mayor, that there is a public hearing that's going to go on. That's reassuring because it really just seemed like this was a one and done thing, and we'd like to just discuss it further and have our council members support that. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we will move on. Thank you, everyone, for your comments. Next, we'll move to presentations, Roman numeral 4. A Constitution Week proclamation proclaiming the week of September 17th through 23, 2025 as Constitution Week and presenting the proclamation to Daughters of American Revolution. Ellis Whitman Chapter Representative Kathy Dobbs is here today. So Kathy's going to join me up here, and I will read the proclamation. Embodies the principles of limited government in a republic dedicated to rule by law. And whereas September 17, 2025 marks the 238th anniversary of the drafting of the Constitution of the United States by the Constitutional Convention. And whereas it is fitting and proper to accord official recognition to this magnificent document and its memorable anniversary, and to patriotic celebrations which commemorate the occasion. And whereas Public Law 915 guarantees the issuing of the proclamation each year by the President of the United States of America, designated September 17 through 23 as Constitution Week. Now therefore I, Dan Johnson, Mayor of the City of Lewiston, do hereby proclaim the week of September 17 through 23 as Constitution Week, and ask our citizens to reaffirm the ideals of the framers of the Constitution had in 1787 by vigilantly protecting the freedom guaranteed to us through the starting of our liberties, remembering that lost rights may never be regained. In witness whereof, I have guaranteed that I am, and seal of the City of Lewiston, Idaho, to be fixed here to this 8th day of September 2025. Daniel P. Johnson, Mayor, City of Lewiston. Thank you. Also display on Okay, council, that brings us to Roman number 5, public hearings and related action items. Item A is a public hearing on proposed fees for fiscal year 2026, accepting public comment on the proposed fees for the fiscal year 2026, including proposed fee increases of more than 5% for utilities, solid waste, golf, cemetery, right-of-way planning, and public records fees. This is an action item. We have our Community Development Director, Shannon Grow, with us here tonight to get us started. Also, the hearing process will work like this. You'll have 3 minutes if you have citizen comments to provide them. There'll be a staff presentation, and then we will close the public hearing. But also a reminder to staff, or the council, pardon me, that no additional evidence or testimony may be received once the public hearing is closed. So this is the time to ask questions you might have with the public, applicant, and/or staff. So I would encourage you to take advantage of that. And then we will close the public hearing. So once again, council, this is your opportunity to listen and to ask questions. So with that, I'm going to open the public hearing at 6:33 and turn it over to our Community Development Director, Shannon Grove. Shannon, welcome. Please
Thank you,
introduce
Mayor,
yourself to
City
the record.
Council. Shannon Grow, Community Development Director. I'm kind of the facilitator of this combined fee resolution for tonight. Different departments are all kind of represented. What we tried to do was combine 11 fee resolutions into one to make better clarity for the public and for the council moving forward. So this presentation is built to go through each of the fee schedules. And probably what we should do for clarity for everybody, go through the fee schedule, answer any questions council has, then we'll go through the rest of the fee schedules, and then we'll take public comment. As I said, this is a combined fee resolution. Previous to this, there were 11 separate fee resolutions that were kind of all over the place as far as consistency and how they looked or how they were presented. And so this one gives greater transparency, one location for citizens and for others to find the city's fees. And it will provide consistency across all the departments. We did combine this one fee schedule, though, has 7 schedules to make it a little bit easier so that it's not just a whole bunch of lines of fees. This will be updated annually. That doesn't mean every single fee gets increased annually. It just means that the fee schedule itself gets updated annually. And in the future, because we don't have to do all of this upfront work, it will most likely be in July prior to setting budgets. So look forward to that next summer. Very sensitive. Okay, starting with Schedule A, public records. So with each of these, I have a slide that kind of tells you what the fee schedule is, and then what is new this year, and what is included in this schedule that's greater than 5%. So for Schedule A, public records, new this year is non-resident fees. The state legislature allowed for cities in Idaho this year with the legislation to allow for different types of fees for non-residents. So included in Schedule A, and I just have these here for reference for folks. You don't need to see all of these if you don't want to, but this is what it is. If you have questions about these, we can go through them. None of the copying fees that you see here have changed. So black and white copies, 10 cents a page, they still are 10 cents a page. The difference is that for non-residents, the fees can be charged at an hourly rate for the actual employee, whereas for fees that are to residents is for the lowest paid department employee. And Jennifer Tangano is also here tonight if you have very specific questions about public records. So I'll pause just for a minute if council has any questions on this fee schedule.
Councilor Spickelmeyer?
Thank you. I guess back, Director, to your original statements about this combining all of these.
Yes.
So in the future, do they all have to be changed at the same time, or
Yes.
would it be brought up, all throughout the year and just change the resolution as they go?
The way it will work is, for the most part, everything will be done in July. If a fee needs to be changed prior to July, then yes, the whole fee schedule comes before you because it's all one document,
Okay.
one resolution. Okay, moving on then to Schedule B, ambulance EMS fees. This is for basic life support, advanced life support, transports, out-of-area transfers, local non-emergency connections. This year, there are no new fees proposed and no fees greater than 5%.
Counselor Spicklemeyer. Thank you. So, Director, in this, we just went through a deal where with the county, where we approved the fee selection for them. Is this part of it or is this separate?
We have Chief Reitmeyer here tonight that will answer your question.
Thank you, Greg Reitmeyer, Fire Chief. To your question, Councilman Spicklemeyer, the Nez Perce County contract that was just before you is a specific contract with them. Within that contract were rates that directly reference this sheet. This is the MSAB approves these, or MSAB makes the recommendation, you guys approve them, and then we use this to structure some of that fee structure. So like hourly, standby, things like that come directly from this.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
Question, Counselor. Counselor?
Okay, Schedule C, Parks and Recreation. This includes fees for rentals of city-owned spaces, ball fields, park shelters, vendor fees for city-sponsored events, and fees for Brighton Canyon Golf Course. There are no new fees proposed this year. However, there are increases in fees greater than 5% under the Brighton Canyon Golf Course fees, which are part of your packet, lined out here. And Rob Hayes is here from the golf course tonight if you had specific questions about those fees.
Councilor Spicklemeyer. Thank you. And I don't know who to direct it to. I had it here directed to Director Glenn, but anyone. I looked these up and all the comparable, the other three golf courses in the valley, and we're at the bottom. And I'm wondering each year, the city has to add to the golf courses, costs the taxpayers about $300,000. So is it right to have these at the bottom of the chain? Or should we be moving up closer to the top and help cover our expenses?
Sure. The contract that we have with Coursco allows them to set the fees. However, I suppose council could recommend that they go up higher. Rob, do you want to address it at all?
Rob Hayes, Brighton Canyon Golf Course. I think the biggest part of this with the fee structure that Coursco has running is the sticker shock. When the people come across the counter and it's more than, because most of these fees are only up by a couple of bucks here and there, which I get your point. But you would be surprised at how many people do balk on a couple of bucks. Well, geez, you do that again, well, it's like every year you do it. Well, it wouldn't matter what the price was, and that's kind of we would rather gradually go up. And you're right, we are the lowest in the ballot. Eventually, and maybe that is true. Maybe the council makes a recommendation that we go up more than what we are. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, thank you.
Mr. Mayor?
Councilor Wright?
Yeah, so a question along the same lines, just on the junior pass 17 and under, and I'm no expert here, I just see that's one that increased the most, and my thought would be we'd want to increase that the least to encourage more young golfers to grow up into older golfers.
And that makes sense too. We're trying to get our pricing structure up to snuff with every other golf course. Our junior passes have always been lower than anything else. We put together different kind of programs for these kids also, where they get their pass and a range bucket, a range pass and a player's pass for X amount of money, that kind of thing. So I mean, price wise, we're still very competitive with anybody else.
Great.
Or less.
Thank you.
Jennifer, welcome.
Thank you, Mayor, Councilors, Jennifer Tangano, City Attorney. I came up here to address Councilor Spickelmeyer's question about why the fees aren't comparable to the other golf courses in town. One of the biggest factors is, as a government entity, we're restricted on charging fees to cover our costs. for the most part, and we can't run the golf court for profit. And so that's the biggest difference between us and the other golf courses where they're private commercial enterprises and they're ran for profit. For all intents and purposes, I'm not familiar with the structure for the golf course owned by the Nez Perce tribe, but under Idaho law, we're restricted to limit our fees for services. Even here where Course Co sets the fees, we're still limited in charging fees to cover really the costs of running and administering the golf course. So those fees have to be reflected in that, and we're not capable of running it for profit. So anything that would create a profitable situation, a sense of the cost of our services plus, you know, the other costs associated with running the golf course, and then the profit side of things, we can't add in that profit side of things under Idaho law.
Councilor Spickelmeyer. So I don't think we're getting close to profit if we're having to pay. That's my whole point.
Well, as far as the question of why we're not charging more, there are limitations in what we charge. The city attorney's office, we don't analyze what is profitable or what's not. But as far as setting the fees, there are restrictions on how much we can set the fees, depending on the assessments of Parks and Rec and Course Co.
Councilor Forsman.
So I don't know if we have this then. How far are we to covering just our expenses? Anybody have that?
Amy, welcome.
Amy Gordon, City Treasurer. So I actually just looked at those numbers earlier today, and if you recall, 2023 was a partial year. Course Co had went into the contract during that fiscal year. Fiscal year 2024, the net profit after Course Co deducted our management fees was approximately $100,000. And then that's the money that has supported the other capital projects that are in the general funds for the golf course. So we've been doing some bunker refurbishments, tee leveling. They redid the driving range netting. So when you see those, so we're trying, from that profit, we're putting that money back into the capital improvements of the golf course.
Councilor.
So, and maybe I'm not understanding this math correctly. So does that mean we're around 200,000 behind with just covering expenses, or am I misunderstanding?
Well, there's a lag. So when we started with the contract with Course Co, we let some capital get established with them so that when we request from Course Co a draw on that capital, we're not bringing it all the way down to zero. So they maintain some of that to ensure continuous operation. During this fiscal year, we requested our first draw, and it was 100,000. I think it might have been right at 100,000. It might have been a little bit less than that. And then that money went into the general fund, and it has helped supported the capital projects that we have programmed for the golf course, which has occurred over fiscal year 23, 24, and the current year.
Sorry, Mayor.
So it's not, I can't say if we spent exactly every dollar we collected towards, there's a lag there.
Councilor Forsman.
I don't remember the number you said, Spickelmeyer, but is it costing the taxpayers around what'd you say?
300.
300,000? Want to make sure that there's clarity there and whether we're actually in the hole. That, when I hear that, I'm hearing we're in the hole 300,000 by having this golf course, and that's not a comforting thing to hear. So I want to make sure we're walking out here with clarity that that's not what's happening.
Yeah, I think if you look at your general fund budget for golf the last few years, you have to remember the management fees are in those expenses because we gross those up in the revenue because we have to run those expenses through our books, even though they're deducted by Course Co before we see the money. However, the capital improvements we make in the golf course, they can go up and down like any other capital improvement. So there's some years you might put more capital into the golf course than other years. So you'll have like an ebb and a flow in those capital improvements, but we haven't made that significant of capital improvements. I mentioned the ones that have been done. Okay. They were not high cost. There might have been maybe a mower bought too, but they weren't high cost improvements.
Council President Clayburgh?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thanks, Amy, for that. What we have is, I mean, they're fundamentally different management models for both, for Bryden Canyon versus Lewiston Country Club and Red Wolf. Quail Ridge, my understanding, is still under private ownership. So that's a kind of a different deal, but the two country clubs, if you will, are based on stock ownership in their clubs. So the individual members that choose to join do buy stock to belong to the country club. Plus they pay a monthly fee, and so they're governed totally different than what we have here. And I do agree, and I've been down this road before with the city, is that we're not in the business of making money off the golf course. We're there to provide recreational entertainment, if you will, if you can call it that. I just went golfing a couple weeks ago, and it wasn't very entertaining, but so that's a big difference. And if it costs us a little bit of money to provide, you know, whatever it is, 100 and something acres of recreation out there on airport land, then so be it.
Councilor Wright?
Yeah, so just to clarify some numbers, what I have in front of me, in 2024, we appropriated approximately $378,992. I don't have 2025 in front of me, but 2026, the budget we just got done going through, we appropriated $379,710 under golf. That's the numbers I have for the golf course. I just wanted to add that.
Okay, Director?
Okay, so moving on to Schedule D, Normal Hills Cemetery. This includes fees for graves, crypts, niches, opening and closing fees, and other cemetery fees. There are no new fees proposed this year. However, there are some fees that are increased greater than 5%, including the ones listed here: second right of interment for cremations without a graveside service, infant and cremains grave without a graveside service, mausoleum niche with graveside service, mausoleum niche without graveside service, Saturday service, Wilbert's Vault, as well as Sunday service. A lot of these are passed on from these companies, and so we did need to increase them accordingly. There are no questions. I'll move on to the next one. Okay. Business licensing. Business license fees include general business licensing, special event licensing, alcohol beverage licensing, and other miscellaneous business licensing fees. The only fee that's new this year is the transfer of liquor by the drink license. And any fee that's more than 5% under business licensing. And the only fee that's being increased under business licensing is the business license copy mailed from $1 to $5. That's just really to recoup our costs there. This new fee of transfer of liquor by the drink license was omitted in previous fee schedules, so we needed to add it to this one, but it is considered new because we didn't have it previously. And fees for alcohol beverages, which are listed here, are set by the state of Idaho. And so where you may ask why we wouldn't increase some of these fees, they are set by the state. I know there's been questions before about the alcohol catering permits, the daily permits of $20. We have looked into that, and it is $20 set by the state of Idaho. Any questions on that one? Okay. Community development, this includes fees for planning and zoning actions, building, electrical, mechanical, plumbing, and special permits, plan review, fire fees, and inspections. There are no new fees proposed this year, and there are no fees greater than 5%. You may have heard me in the past, we have not increased permit fees for a couple of years. The reason for this is that the city of Lewiston, when I looked into it after taking over this position, our fees were high compared to other fees in the state charged by other municipalities in the state. And building permit fees, along with the other permit fees, are based on valuation. Valuations go up. And so while valuations go up, we did not want to increase the fees as well. That's why those fees have not gone up in the last couple of years, and we are not proposing to increase them this year. I did look at a couple of other cities, and we are still on the higher side. For planning and zoning, though, we are very much on the lower side of the fees, and so those fees are going up at 5%, but not greater than 5%. And that still puts us fairly low. And when I talk about planning and zoning fees, what I'm talking about is like a conditional use permit, variances, zone changes that come before the council, and those types of actions.
There.
Councilor Forsman?
Wasn't there, I'm trying to find it, for the, if you're against the conditional use permit and you pay a filing fee.
Appeal?
The appeal, thank you, sorry, my brain was, is there not a way that if citizens got enough signatures, perhaps, that they would not have to pay for that filing cost?
If you would like to make that, you can. But there is a process for those that does cost the city money to process those types of appeals. So that would be why there's a charge for it. But you could propose to, so it's about the fourth line down, appeal of planning and zoning commission decision or a staff decision. There is equal to the original filing fee for a planning and zoning commission decision.
Thank you.
Councilor Wright?
Yeah, just, I think I know the answer to this, but just in case, if the citizen wins the appeal, do they get their money back?
It's gone through the process still. You don't pay to play. You're paying for an answer. It's paying for the process.
I see.
Yes, but like I said, if council wants to set a fee of 0, you are free to do so. Any other questions on community development fees? All right. The next two schedules are public works fees. And so I'm going to turn over the presentation to Dustin Johnson, the Public Works Director, and he will go through the next two schedules.
All right. Good evening, Mayor, City Council, Dustin Johnson, Public Works Director. First one up is just the general public works fees. So these are typically your engineering, your impact fees, your subdivisions, things like that. Your less common fees, but we still process them in public works. There's no new fees. The increased fees, there are, I guess, 3. If you count water and wastewater equity buying fees. So that the one, the trench street cut fees, it's kind of deceiving. It's not increased more than 5%. It was actually a combination of 2. There used to be a trench cut fee and a street cut fee, and it was hard to track in the field and equitably charge. And so the staff decided it was much easier to combine them. So combining those triggered it to be, it was like, if you saw, it was something like 25%. It wasn't that, it was just combining 2 fees. For easier tracking. The other 2 on the table there are water equity buy-in fees and wastewater equity buy-in fees. if you remember the presentation, the work session in June, this was a study that was adopted 5 years ago. So this was the recommendation just following that plan. So this is the last year of that plan. And so those rates were adopted or proposed within this fee schedule. And so those fees were under 10, but above 5. I think they're about 9% across the board. And those, just real quick, equity buy-in fees are an opportunity for those who are users of the facility. So let's say you've had a water service line within the city of Lewiston for 50 years. You've invested, you've paid into, the water treatment plant, all of the upgrades that have come along in the course of you being a user for 50 years. And now somebody comes in, they get use of all those facilities but haven't paid for it. So it's a way for, communities to have those new users buy into the facilities that they've invested in. Traditionally, when this study was done 5 years ago, so the data is now 6 or 7, pre-COVID, Lewiston was way low compared to everybody else in Idaho. And so this was an opportunity, again, for those users who are new to buy into it and matching kind of the development pattern within the state of Idaho. So that's where those fees are. I don't see any comments. Now we roll into the one that we're here for. Utility fees. So again, this is for our 5 enterprise funds: water, wastewater, storm, and sanitation. I guess that's 4. No new fees. Increases greater than 5%. That would be water consumption, private fire lines, and the per month charge, which ties into water consumption. Bacterial testing, water line disinfection. Those 2 are fees that are tied directly to just lab fees have gone up, so that's a pass on from what we have to charge, what we get charged to do the line disinfection onto the user. The bottom 2, the 32-gallon cart service and solid waste is, that was a miss. There's so many, if you look in this rate sheet, there's so many lines. There was a mistake that was missed previously, so this was just a catch up from when we adopted it in 24, so it's a double year bump. A lot of these sanitation charges, we have them all across for various types of totes, various days of pickup, and so there's probably some of these charges that nobody has, but we have them available. And so that was one that was very low use, and so it got missed, and so we're just picking it up more into it. I'm going to go into a lot of depth now into utility fees, specifically water. Water is the one that I think most people are focused about. So before I dive into the details, or any other questions about the previous fees that I've talked about as far as the fire service lines, anything else, simple stuff.
Director, why don't we just pause just for a minute here so the council can just think about this. It's important. A lot of work to do here. Councilor Korsman?
Who generally pays these fees?
Well, so for the water private fire, or so bacterial testing and water line disinfection, that's a developer. So that's when they're building a new water line, so it's not accepted as city property yet. And so they have to construct it, build it, test it, and then disinfect it, charge it. And it's state law that only the purveyor of the water system can operate valves and operate it. So it's part of that acceptance of the line. Once it passes the back tees and it's accepted, it's the city's. And so there's no charge to that. If there's a water main break, the city takes responsibility to fix it and disinfect it and test it. But in that transition from when it's a private construction project to when it's owned by the city, that's the charge that's passed on to the developer for the acceptance of it.
Councilor Spickelmeyer. Thank you, Mayor. So, Director, I didn't see your other slide. Are you going to go over what our justification is for a 10% increase in water consumption?
Yes, that's what we'll be doing for the next hour.
Okay. Well, Director, let's just wait just a minute if we may. Councilor Klein had to step out for just a moment.
Okay.
So hear this because she's going to vote on it shortly.
And the slide before, sorry, Myra, excuse me. The slide before that was all development as well, because they have to buy into our system, correct? Just want to make sure
Yeah.
I'm on that.
A lot of these rates are all subdivisions, vacation of right of way. These are not, there's not a lot of revenue generated by these fees. They're to cover our costs, kind of like community development. We have a city surveyor, we have a city engineer. And, this covers, if you have public hearings, there's noticing and that we have to pay in the paper and all of that other stuff. And so that covers the costs for all those types of expenses, subdivisions.
Thank you.
So yeah, staff tries to do our best to analyze how much time we spend on these things, reviewing it. And I think you guys are familiar with approving subdivisions. No one subdivision is alike, so some of them are very easy and very simple to process. Some of them take quite a bit of time. They may be appealed. And so we do our best to kind of grab kind of where the average is and charge that, so we're not, the taxpayers of Lewiston are not paying for development, while at the same time, we're not giving these things away. And we do our best annually to kind of look at these costs. I think last year we caught one where we felt like we were undercharging, and so we moved a few things, and just like on the last one, we found a better way of doing it, so we combined some fees.
Why don't we give it just one more minute, Director Young? Councilor Wright.
Yeah, so, since we have a moment, if you'd like to explain the equity buy-in a bit, since we have an audience.
Yeah, it's just another way of trying to, equity buy-ins are intended for capacity expansion. So the equity buy-ins go into a separate account. There's no intent of using that to fix what's broken. It's that these new users are coming in, and that means we need to expand water main sizes, or we need to expand the capacity of a water treatment plant, or something of that. And so that's where those funds can go for. That's not intended for operations or maintenance. And again, it's a way of communities to offset the demands, as growth costs money. You've got to upsize all of these facilities. And so that is a way for, particularly say Treasure Valley down there, where you have a lot of these really tiny farming communities that are now booming at the seams. That's an opportunity for them to utilize the growth, the new residents to pay for that capacity expansion. For Lewiston, we're not Nampa down there. We are Lewiston. We are experiencing growth. The revenue source for that is not, I think our projected was $50,000 a year. So it's not a huge amount of revenue, but it does offset some of those demands that we do see in these areas of town that are experiencing growth. All right, ready?
Thank you, Director.
Okay, so I listed 5 frequently asked questions to open up just the conversation. Specifically, these are mostly pointed towards water. And I guess I probably should have organized these a little bit better, but I'm going to go straight to the third bullet, which is, why is water so expensive in Lewiston? And so I just, to have this conversation right out of the gate, Lewiston has expensive water. That's a hard stop. I'm not trying to buffalo anybody here to tell you that we're sneaking a deal through here. This is a hard time right now for the water department, and what we're experiencing as far as investment in undervalued assets previously, and so we are in a strange, unique time where we're paying off some of the debts that maybe should have been paid off in the past, while looking forward and trying to figure out how we're going to fix the stuff that's still broken. Hopefully tonight I can provide at least some answers. I know we can, like I said, I was joking, hopefully not an hour. I'm going to run out of air, but you can slice this the economic way. You can slice this the historical way of decisions we should have made. You can slice it in the engineering way of what's best for the Lewiston as far as providing water and municipal services. And there's no right answer. And I don't claim to have all the answers. But I'm going to try and go through and outline and answer these questions as best I can, knowing that they're probably going to spawn 4 or 5 more questions as we start discussing this in greater detail. I guess I'm going to jump straight to the bottom 2 that I can answer coming out of the gate here is why can't we match the rates from, say, Lloyd or across the river at a Soton County PUD? And the answer is just like water, wastewater, sanitation, these are all enterprise funds. So everything is contained within it. Every nickel that comes as user fees is money that is used for that utility. I can't raise water rates to pay for sanitation. I can't take, stormwater fees and supplement water. That they are independent. And so each, we meet. Mayor and I met with Lloyd just last week. We have conversations with them. We work together, but their resources, their assets, their liabilities, that's theirs. Their ratepayers pay for those, and they have their own issues currently, and we have our own issues. And I can't just match what they do because we have our own debts and issues to resolve. So that's why that we just can't go out there and find what the average is and then try and be just below that. Why can't we get rid of the meter fee? And so that's a very common question. And so going back before, some of these things I can pass on to previous administrations, but about 2018, the meter fee, base fee, was changed, and I don't know the exact number off the top of my head, but it was raised significantly. The meter fee, I want to say, was under $10 a month. At the time, it was raised to like $30 a month, and I'm ballparking. I might be wrong somewhere, but orders of magnitude, it was tripled or quadrupled. I don't know what it was, but it went up significantly. And the purpose of that, and the way, and this is not an exact science, but generally, the intent is the base fee, the meter fee, pays for the pipes in the ground, the fire hydrants that are out in the front yard, that if you never turn your faucet on, you never consume any water, we have to have that delivery system come to your house. And so that's roughly 40% of the revenue that the water department generates to the water department. So that's just, knowing that if there's a fire and the fire department comes on, they can go to that hydrant and it's operational. The other 60% is consumption. So, that's where that comes across. And so that meter fee has been there forever, or I don't want to say forever, but as long as my records go back, it goes back a long ways. It was just significantly increased in 2018, I think, or 17, in order to offset that demand. So you're not so reliant on water flow, that you get that base flow.
Mark, we have to wait, please. We'll give you a chance. Thank you.
So this is a couple of recycled slides. I just want to go, going back into the background of how utility rates are created. The facility master plans are kind of the Bible of all of these enterprise funds. Some of these are very simple. So sanitation, we have a transfer station. We have very little invested in as far as a facility master plan because it's one facility, it's easier to track. Where a water facility that we have, Lewiston's water is probably one of the most complicated water systems in the West. Maybe, I'm confident that it is the most complicated water system in Idaho. I can't think of a system that's more complicated. And so we have to understand where can we find some efficiencies in this system? Where are we lacking? Case in point would be the water treatment plant, which I'll talk a little bit more later. That was an antiquated system built in the 20s that operated all the way up to 2022. And so you have these facilities plans, and so you create a capital improvement plan, and that's prioritized. Where do you need to spend your money? And so that is the value of that. So it gives you a roadmap of where to go. You take that and you roll that into a utility rate study. And so that tells you, okay, you're generating this much revenue. You can expect that this is where you're going to need to invest it. Here's where you're going to need to save your money. And here's the best way to charge fairly to your customers out there and able to build that. And you establish a financial model. And that utility rate, that one's far more complicated for sanitation because you've got so many different users, you've got so many different recycling and compost and curbside pickup, transfer station. That's where sanitation is a little bit more reliant on the utility rate study than maybe wastewater and water. Then you roll forward into implementation, and that's what we're doing right now. You take all of that stuff that tells you here's what you need, and here's how you pay for it, and then you adopt the rates and you move forward and you improve that. This is something I think I've shown you 5 years in a row now. And so where do your rates go? And so the bottom tier level of that pyramid is operations. That is just keeping the lights on. And so that is typically the majority of what you pay for your water or sewer or stormwater goes into just keeping that utility operating. The next middle chunk is debt service. That's only right now, I have no plans for, is for water and wastewater. So that's for the wastewater plant and the water plant and the well and the reservoir and the intake that we're working on. And so there's only two bonds that we're paying off right now for the debt service. Then the top of that pyramid is capital improvements. And so that's your large projects that you can't just pay through part of your operations and maintenance. And so the question is, okay, so you don't adopt the full rate, it comes right out of the top because you have to keep the plant and everything operating and you have to pay your debt. So everything comes out of your capital. Okay, I wanted to give a little bit of a history lesson because we didn't get, now this is specifically to water. We didn't get into this situation overnight, and we're not getting out of this situation overnight. And so I dove back into the 1991 Water Master Plan, which is the oldest plan that I have in the books. I have a 91, a 98 update, and a 2010, and then we get into the 2018 and stuff that we use currently. 91, primary focus was the water treatment plant. So think of 1991, plant was built in 1924, so it had been operating. There was a significant upgrade in the 70s, but you're essentially running off of 1920s technology in 1991, and they still said, yeah, this is a big need right here. The city of Lewiston needs to invest in this water plant. At the time in 1991, they said it's about $7.5 million. They had no money in the bank at the time. They said, in order to get this plant to be successful or get this plant off the ground or this project off the ground, you essentially need to adopt 9% rate increases annually for the foreseeable future, at least for a decade, in order to get your revenue. Because they looked at the revenue and recognized the system that you were operating was not sustainable long-term with what the revenue was coming in. And so you were going to continue to eat at that capital reserves that were going to pay for these investments, and you were never going to be able to pay for that water plant because you weren't generating enough revenue. And so they recommended 5 to 6 years of saving the funds so you could pay down that bond and construct it in 1998. And you can see their proposal from this master plan was basically borrowing $11 million. And I looked and they had that prorated and it would be paid off in 2026 if they had done it at this time. The only other thing that was worth pointing is the average bond rate was 7%, which is about double of what we're looking at right now. So just wanted to call that out. So here's the history of the water rate. So I don't have the 90s, but I have 1998. So you start looking, and it looks in the 98, 99, they weren't at 9, they were at 8%. And slowly over that course of 2000 to 2003, they whittled it down. And so from 2003 to 2014, that 10-year period, they did not raise water rates 7 out of the 10 years. And so if anybody's ever studied economics in any form, and I'm an engineer, I don't know anything about economics, but nothing gets cheaper over time. Inflation, CPI, that's the enemy of what we try to do here, is to try and keep up with inflation. And so if you look, that was about 29% of inflation from 2003 to 2014. And that's a CPI, that's Consumer Price Index. That's not a true construction index, but it's generally what's available for me to spitball. And so you can see you lost 25% of your buying power. And so if you look at 2014, that was a 15% rate increase. And you still didn't have a water plant, you didn't have any money in reserves. And so I'm not here to throw previous councils or public works directors or city managers or anybody else under the bus, because I don't know what the conversation was 2003 to 2014. I just know there was no water plant built and there was no revenue generated to build for a new water plant in that period, that decade. So real quick to get into the specifics of where we're at today. Top line is your overall revenue annually. That money or that number will fluctuate dramatically. If it's a wet year, unless people irrigate, there might be a grant that comes in that will count towards revenue. We might not get any grants, that revenue goes down. So we're roughly $6 to $9 million a year in revenue on that. We have that debt service that's $2 million a year, roughly right in there for the water plant. So that comes out the top. The one thing I did want to call out, operations reserves. So this is comparing the current fiscal year and the upcoming fiscal year. So plugging, when we met in June at the work session, I took the feedback from you and then we plugged that into the budget. So that's what this is. This is plugged into the budget. These are the numbers that were plugged in based off the feedback that we got in June. We're still burning capital. We're not, you can see, we didn't have any major capital projects that weren't paid for by a grant in 2025. And we're burning money in reserves and we're burning money in capital. So we're still not on top of that. So where do we go from here? And again, I think I opened with recognizing water is expensive in Lewiston. Trying to find a way to make it somewhat more manageable for those who are maybe not having the flexibility to have a large manicured green yard. That's the number one thing we get is people concerned about those in fixed incomes that can't afford to have water. And so what we're proposing with this one, and we brought it up in June, is to freeze that meter fee. And so when they increased that meter fee, whatever, in 18, incrementally as the rates went up, whatever, I can't remember what they have been, but it's been 5%, 3.5%. I think there was a big one last year. It went with the meter fee and the consumption rate equally. And so now your meter fee for the smallest meter, I think it's $39 per meter per month. We're freezing that. And so if you are a low if you don't have a yard, you don't have a large family or a smaller yard, or even just like in the winter and you're not even irrigating. So taking that out, you're not going to see a huge hit on this. The ones who are going to see this is going to be the large irrigators and the industrial users who are large consumers of water. Trying to find the best, fairest way to make this, it's about the revenue. We got to make the revenue in order to make this utility function. So that net brings your overall revenue like 5.25%, a little over 5%. But again, that's dependent on consumption, how much water is consumed over the year. In the short term, our goals complete that water intake project, and next year we're doing the water master plan, which will then, it's the good news, bad news. It's the plan that we're operating with is kind of driven by the new water plant, so it's outdated. I can, off the top of my head, outline $50 million of capital improvements that need to be invested in. That you saw the reserves. There's not $50 million in reserves, and so getting that that water master plan will help us better understand. We're in a hole. We got to stop digging. How far are we need to get out of that hole? And I will be honest. The ratepayers are not going to shoulder that burden. They cannot. I mean, you're not going to make $50 million out of the rates. You can see it. It's just not going to happen. So we continue to, like the water intake, the mayor and I are continuing to meet with the Army Corps of Engineers, our federal delegates, our state down in Boise. We have to find a way to make these things function. And then, of course, finding ways, whether it's grant funding and efficiency in how we project plan. And, it kind of goes back to like the Main Street. The Main Street project was an opportunity for us to bundle water, wastewater, stormwater, and transportation all into one project. And you dig the hole once, you fix all the broken pipes, and you put it back. Those are rare. Those aren't up on Thane, on Bryden, because our water system doesn't go that far. But those are the opportunities that we look for. With that, I'm done with water. I'm going to move through the other utilities. We can stop and visit each utility, or I can go all the way through if you want.
Councilor Spickelmeyer. Mayor. So Director, can you expound on and mainly for the listening public and everyone here on the intake and what it is and why we need it?
Yeah. So going back to the bond, the SRF bond, which was a water plant, intake, a reservoir, and a well, it goes back to that master plan, identified all the needs, and on those, the top 5 or however many that was the intake. And so when the dams went in and the levees, surrounded downtown, the Army Corps of Engineers designed and volunteered to construct a new water intake. So up until that year in the 70s, the water plant had its intake right outside. But when they built the levees, they built it around, and so purposely put it upstream from Clearwater Paper, which sounds like a great idea. If there was ever any spills, it was upstream, so it would not impact the city of Lewiston's water. They built a temporary one while they were constructing the levees that would serve the city, and then they were going to start building the main permanent intake. It never functioned. We are still utilizing the temporary one that was built in the 70s. It back eddies and silts shut, so we have to dredge it. We have to get permits through the Corps. And so we've been working on this intake. And so that was part of that SRF, project, was to get that going. And then, of course, COVID happens, cost overruns on the other projects. We got more ARPA dollars to pay for it. We've been working with the state. But this intake has been just a headache. And, I think if you ever speak with the mayor, the city of Lewiston stance was, we were sold a bill of goods in the 70s when we were built the levee that intake should function. It never did. And so the Corps has kind of walked away, washed their hands from this, because I think, at some point in the 80s and 90s and early 2000s, and even up to the 2010s, the city stopped asking because they weren't making any headway. And I think at this point with the mayor saying, no, we're going back to the original agreement that we were going to get an intake that functioned for the city of Lewiston. And so I can't tell you how many hours we've got invested just on the phone, Zoom calls, handshakes, meetings, trying to get, something. We're currently working on the big, beautiful bill, trying to get this included in that. So, that's
the one that's being built out by the scales?
Yeah. So out by the scales on the way out to the casino, if you look at, that we had SRF remnants, we had some Army Corps grant money a little bit, and then we had ARPA money that was sent down from the state, pooled enough to build the in-water stuff. And so that's what's being constructed now. We're still short $8 to $12 million on the equipment that would run that. So yeah, we're still short, and we run into some more complications in construction because it's underwater and it's difficult. But yeah, that's where we're, even on a good day, we were going to be short $8 million on that project. And that's also not in the coffers right now.
So Director, I think what I'd like to do is give you a break and open it up for public testimony at this point. A lot of information, I think, for the public to consume. So let's at least cover what we talked about. You have wastewater and sanitation left, is that it?
Wastewater, sanitation, and stormwater. They're not nearly as long as the water.
Okay, well, why don't we give you a break here and then just open it up for any public testimony? And then we'll have the director finish up, and if you'd like to come back and provide testimony on that, we'll do that too. But I don't want us to go too long, and then we forget our questions. So Mark, did you have a question, or do you want to lead us off? Just state your name and city residence, please.
I live downtown, and I am one of these I have a pretty big place, and I try to keep it alive, and I live on a sandbar, so I use a lot of water just to keep my stuff from dying. But anyway, but the meter fee thing, that kicked in when this $30 million bond went down. Okay? And so my gripe about that $30 million bond was that the people in downtown Lewiston we weren't aware that part of that, half of that money went for this well and this storage facility up by the new high school. Now, in my opinion, that portion should have been shared by the people that live in that are Lloyd people. Okay? Because that went up for the park and the high school. It's not, per se for residents of downtown Lewiston water system to benefit. The whole city benefits from that, not just the people that live downtown, like the water treatment plant. Okay, so to me, that was that was deceptive stuff, because obviously we were not told that 30 million was going to include all that other stuff. Plus, the other issue I have is, and maybe Mr. Johnson or whoever can tell me, who pays for the water that goes on all the city parks, the cemetery, the golf course? Do just the people that live downtown, are we footing the bill for all of this, what I would consider to be city public water? How about the city offices here? Who pays for all that water? Is that, I asked Mr. Johnson when we were talking about that $25 million bond thing, why is Clarkston able to provide water for a third of what we pay? I just got my water and sewer bill for a month. It was over $400. And I live alone. And a dog. I got a dog. And I do try to grow in a little garden because I got a lot of relatives up on the prairie that have a tough time growing stuff. But anyway, I just have those questions about why is water so expensive in Lewiston when over there it's a lot less? And so, those are some of my issues. And like in my opinion, this, like I say, the new well and that water reservoir that they built up by the high school, that shouldn't have been all on the backs of the people downtown. And I don't know how much of that contributed to the $30 meter fee that's now $39. And so, but it just seems like it goes on and on and on. It's just like when they started talking about repairing the water plant out there, and I'm sure I've run over my 3 minutes, but all that money that was, they started raising water rates, but 20 years later, when they get ready to do this, to fix the plant, guess how much money was in there? A big goose egg. Because where did all those probably millions of dollars, where did that money go that was supposed to be set aside to replace that water treatment plant? So.
Thank you, Mark.
You don't want to listen.
Council, you.
That's why the meter fee went up.
Okay, Mark's going to leave us, all right?
Yeah.
Are there any other citizens that would like to provide some testimony at this point? Name and city of residence for the record. Thank you.
Bob Blakey, City of Lewiston. And Mark, I'll trade my water bill with your water bill any day. Mine's a little bit higher. So, sometimes when I come up in front of this mic, I feel like a historian. Having spent 8 years on the council and experience, it's deja vu. We talked about this for 8 years, and then 12 years went by, and we're still talking about these issues of water rates. The bottom line is the city of Lewiston has one of the most complex water systems, you might even say the United States. We draw the water from the river, then we pay the electricity to pump it up the hill, and then it comes down the hill, and then we have to pump it back up the hill to another reservoir. Our wells are deep, and we have many wells. We're lucky. The city of Lewiston, in one way, is lucky that there was a geologist one time who sat up in front of us and said, your city is fortunate. You have almost an unlimited source of water. You are the envy of states around the nation. But it's expensive water because of your system. So when I was on the council, a study was done. And former Mayor Kleberg will remember this study. And one of the recommendations was a 5% increase. Out of that study, water study was, and we saw all the statistics you saw tonight. Why councils decided not to raise their rates for years, I don't know. Mark's question is legit. Where did that money go that was supposed to be saved? Well, it got absorbed into the capital campaign. It got used for other purposes. The consultant who spoke in front of us in that water study, and that study is, I think it's the 2018, and it sounds like you're still referring to it, recommended a 5% increase across the board for utility rates. I don't know if you raised them 5% last year or not. I do have a bone to pick with this, the way you've done the presentation here this year. I understand you're streamlining it, but you should have probably included a third column that showed what the actual increase was for each line item, 1%, 2%, 5%, 8%. You know, I did the math on some of those, and some of those increases are 10%. But yeah, over the average is 5. But you should have added a third column for us sitting out here in the crowd and for ones who did not have a calculator. About the meter fee, Mark is mostly right on that category. We were told the only way we're going to get ourselves out of this hole was to have a bond issue, convince the voters to build a new water and sewer plant. And they voted yes, overwhelmingly yes. And in that study that was presented to us, they recommended to raise the meter fee to $45. That was even before the election. That $45 fee, the money raised by that, was to be designated to pay off the bond issue over 20 years, which was financed at record low rates, in some cases under 3%. What I don't understand is why it went from 48 to 47. Is that extra increase being used to pay off the bond issue early, or is it now going into other aspects of the water system? We originally voted the $45 fee, the council, and that money was supposed to go directly to repayment of the bond issue. It seems now that that story has changed, and that money can be used for other discretions within the city. That was not the intent of the city council when we voted to approve that. It was to be used as a financing mechanism to pay the bond issue off so that we did not have to go to the voters and say, by the way, this new bond issue is going to raise your taxes by whatever. We said we can build this water plant, we can build this sewer plant with no additional taxes. And that was the promise made, and that was the promise kept.
Can I get you to wrap up, please?
Yes, you can. Anyway, thank you for your time. Thanks for listening to me. I do encourage you to go back if you are referring to that study, and I do applaud you for not raising the meter fee any further. Thank you.
Thank you, Bob.
Thank you.
Counselors, you are welcome to ask questions too of the public. So if you have one, please let us know. We're not trying to drive them off, but we may have questions also. So, yes, sir. Please introduce yourself.
My name is Charles Bell. I live here in Lewiston, Idaho. And I just have a quick comment and question, perhaps for the director and for Mr. Blakey, apparently. I've heard twice now that the water system in the city of Lewiston is the most complicated in the West. And I would like to address that as either a mistruth, a half-truth, or unfortunately a flat-out lie, unless you have failed to go to, say, St. George, Utah, Prescott, Arizona, Reno, Nevada, Seligman, Arizona, or Tucson or Yuma and seen exactly how much water they don't have in higher, hotter, steeper climates and elevations that are way more complicated water systems in way more difficult ground to dig. I'm sorry, I am not going to sit here and hear someone say that this is a more complicated water system than cities that are way more complicated with way harder ground than ours. I'm sorry, I'm not going to let that slide. That's not going to happen. Our system is old. It does need improvements. That's true. But let's tell the truth to each other. The system we have may be broken and need improvements, but it's not the most complicated in the West and far from the most complicated in the United States. Thank you.
Thank you. Mike, welcome. Name, city.
Yep, Mike Lorenz, 440 Knollcrest Court, Lewiston. Dustin, he's given a real good layout of this, the fee increases, but, we've already, invested 50 million in that wastewater plant. We're paying on that, paying on the high school. And now you want to increase the fees. And then you also want to rerun this bond for, $22 million for the downtown infrastructure. Would I get that? I mean, it's a mess. But to me, that getting this downtown infrastructure fixed seems a little more important than, raising the fees up 5%. So it seemed to me like you should either cut them back a ways or freeze them completely, because if you're gonna go to the tax-paying public and say, here, we want you to pass this bond, well, that's pretty hard to swallow when your water rates keep going up. And I understand it, because just what Dustin said, there was a lot of years where the councils just sat there and did absolutely nothing to keep up, well, we'll be everybody's buddy and 0%, but in reality, they did us no favors 20 years down the road. So I would say either dial those fees back, because I don't see that bond passing if you're going to raise the fees up and then, then you come back and ask us to, pay for this downtown project. That's all I can say. All righty, thank you.
Thank you.
Mike. Okay, Director, would you like to continue on, please?
Okay, do you want me to answer any of those questions?
Mayor,
Councilor Forsman?
I think it'd be good to give a brief overview of to answer this
Oh,
gentleman's
sure.
question about the complexity of just to make sure that we are on the clarity here and that.
I don't mean to imply that, Phoenix and, these desert communities that if you can put fountain water in Las Vegas, that's far more complicated than what we're trying to do. So I'm not saying we are blessed. And going to Mr. Blakey's point, in that is true. The city of Lewiston has more water than we know what to do with. We have water. I mean, in the West, water rights are, what is it? Whiskey for fighting and dying, water's for dying or whatever. I mean, we have water. And the complexity statement is it's self-imposed. That's the point I'm trying to make, in that part of it is, yes, we're pumping it from down here up to there. Electricity costs a lot of money. And what the city has done traditionally is to pump it up and then drain it back down, and then pump it up and drain it back down. And so the system that we have inherited today is inefficient. We're pumping it up, then pumping it, and bringing it back down. And in fact, this 1991 master plan, when they were talking about building a new water plant, the consideration was to build it kind of where the high school's at. So you would take raw water upstream from the mill, pump raw water up to some sort of holding facility. At that time, there was not a high school there. And I'm not saying it's exactly where the high school was, but in that general area, and then let gravity drain it back into the system. And that obviously didn't happen. And so, yeah, I'm sympathetic in that, yes, there are communities that have no water rights, have growth challenges or just drought challenges that we are not facing. Ours is a generational, self-imposed situation that we have a system. I can't undo, I can't build a new water plant up there because we don't have the money to build, the stuff that we need. And in fact, in 1998, there was a study that was a joint study by Lloyd and the city that looked at doing similar, that the city and Lloyd would build this kind of the same thing of just pump it up once and then let gravity carry it down. I will give you a little personal history lesson. The first community I worked on was in Montana. Our water plant was in the mountains, and then it just gravity fed all the way through. We had 3 pressure zones. Lewiston's got 30, 40, 50. I mean, we have pressure zones all over. And so you have to manage, if you drive up to Home Depot, you see that terraceness. That is all pressure zones that you have to manage. You can't just open the valve and let it go, because those areas need to be managed. And so they're helter-skelter, hodgepodged across the hillside there, because they had to serve this neighborhood, and then we had to serve this development, and then we had to serve this one. And nobody ever took a wholesale look at, how is this best functioning for the city? And so that's, you look at the progression of these master plans, you start seeing the pencils getting sharper, starting to understand you can't keep raising rates 5, 10% each year. You have to be more efficient. And so that's what we're trying to do. But as I said earlier, we didn't get in here overnight, and we're not going to get out of here overnight. So sorry. That was more than you wanted, but yes, trying to be upfront.
Councilor Klein?
Forsman.
Oh, fortunately.
It's okay. I won't hold it against you this once. So how long are we until we get that bond paid off? Do you know how?
Oh, for the water plant? Was that, we were talking about that today.
15.
24 years for the water plant.
Okay, that's good. To know.
I mean, that, again, that bond, you know, $2 million out of your $9 million, that was built into the model moving forward. And so there's still bonding capacity, whether it's a Main Street project or another project. And so that, I mean, a bond, even if it isn't a Main Street, if it is just a revenue bond, that is something that could be considered moving forward, because that you can't wait for, you know, pennies from heaven. I mean, you can apply for grants, and we're doing that. But yeah, it's 24 years to pay off those from today.
Mayor. I just have two last questions. One is the circuit breaker. If we could explain that to people so that they know how to participate in that if they have a hard time paying their bill. And then two, the second one was, of course I forget. Going to the circuit breaker, and that second one will come back to me.
Yeah, my very last slide, I have the breakdown of the bill, and I'll talk about a little bit of the circuit breaker. But yeah, it's a
Bill, that's why. And I know we talked about this, I think it was last year, about having the bills broken out more evenly, kind of like Vista, for instance, does it, where you can break out your overall monthly bill in a smaller monthly portion versus paying all one lump sum.
Oh.
And I know we talked about maybe making that an option for people to be able to handle their budget a little more easily instead of having just a spike here, lower here. So that way the whole year.
We talked about that last year, and we did a little digging, and I haven't found a way to make that work, because Vista's a power company. They're
Right.
different than a city, and so we typically don't have the latitude to do that. I mean, we can keep looking at it, and that's more of a finance utility billing that we can keep looking at it, but I haven't seen that done. I've seen the tiered water rates, but I've not seen where we can set a level across so you pay the same each month.
Boyd does something similar, but theirs it's like a year, at the end of the year they pay, but I don't know, something to look into. Thank you.
Councillor Klein?
So if we were to not raise the water consumption, how much of the water fund capital projects would we have to reduce to be able to cover it?
I mean, it would come out of the capital, and I can't give you a dollar, like, again, because that's generated by consumption. So if we have a dry or a wet year and our revenue's down by 10, 15, 20%, we're hurting already. So I can't tell you exactly, but you know, the top end. So if you remember, and I didn't bring it in the slide, but you know, if you look at, so like wastewater, we have a long list of capital projects, where water, if you look, it's probably a third of the size. I did print out the cheat sheet. So it would probably come out of the annual pipeline replacement, which is $500,000. We try and do as much as we can in-house. And so that would be the first thing that would go away. We've been trying to we've got recoating for 2 steel reservoirs that were built in the 70s. And so we've been putting $1 million each year into that project. That's getting close to being able to get off the ground. So that would be the next one that would probably come out of it, or just put less into it. But yeah, it would just, you know, there's a forklift on there. There's a truck. So things like that would probably go away out of the capital.
Okay, wastewater.
All right, I promise it will go more from here. So, and you know, I work closely with both the water and wastewater staff, and this is not picking on either of the staff, but I think wastewater starts to show you an example of, you know, they're a couple years ahead of where water wants to be in the same spot wastewater is. You can start seeing, you know, their overall operating revenue is more, but that's just a higher usage, because we collect sanitary sewer from everybody in the city. We only provide service for less than 50% of the city for water. And so they have a higher revenue stream, they have a debt service that's financed at a lower rate for less years, so it'll be paid off 5 years sooner, I think, than the water. And this one's a little bit deceptive in that you can see the operations reserves went down, but that's because we're moving money into capital. And you can also see capital reserves go down, but that's a good thing because we had a large backlog of pipeline replacement that needed to go out, and it got stalled in 23 and 24, and we combined. So we've spent significant amount of money in capital as scheduled, just behind schedule, on the pipeline replacement. So that's an example of where this utility is going. And I talked about CPI inflation. That's the enemy. And so the proposed, what was presented to you and was built into the budget was 2.5% rate increase. And I think that's a decent projection, because if you remember where we were, electricity, I think people have saw Vista's raising rates, fuel is up, equipment is up, trucks are up, labor is up. And so to be able to absorb that into the operations and carry forward just a 2.5% rate inflation, projecting, hoping that moving forward, all this crazy inflation will kind of tamper down. But that's just keeping up with expenses, is what 2.5% is generally flat. And so our immediate plans are complete the pipeline projects. The wastewater master plan was budgeted in 24, and so we're right in the thick of the technical component. So you'll start seeing that in front of you at some work sessions here in the next 6 months. And so finishing that will update our capital plans. And then again, we've got a few large-scale capital projects. There's 2 out of the plant, but I think the bulk of what we've got right now is just pipeline replacement, which is kind of a heavy side of operations and maintenance. And then again, that dovetails into everything we do right now, is trying to find grants, alternative funding sources, and then efficiency in how we bundle our projects together. So that's wastewater. You want me to just roll all the way through the rest of them? Okay. Stormwater is the youngest, smallest enterprise fund right now. Their total operating revenue right now is $2.2 million. They've got some operations reserves that's kind of stagnant, just depending on how you look at that. And then the capital reserves are slowly building for these larger projects that were identified in that capital improvement plan that was adopted with the stormwater master plan. And so this was presented to you in June. Your direction was a 0% rate increase. If you remember way back, I think it was 2 years ago when we adopted this stormwater utility, you went with the 50% capital. And so that was basically that you would rotate through these projects. I think it's every 5 years. And so you basically funded half of the capital. So that's taking us 10 years to turn over our capital projects. It's funded. You can see there it's gaining, a little bit, $400,000 a year. But some of those larger projects, it's just going to take longer to get to those bigger projects. And so our goal is to build up the capital reserves for those larger projects. Well, at the same time, I think, the last bullet, trying to utilize the resources that we have. Like right now, if you're up at North 40, that's a stormwater project. That is paid for by stormwater utilities. That's expanding the size of that pond. We call it the Stewart Pond. And that's just expanding the capacity of the pond. There's a lot of localized flooding up there just because there's not anywhere to put all that water. If you've ever driven down below North 40, you see all that basalt. So it needs a place to hold that water. And so that's what that project does, just trying to eliminate some of that localized flooding. And then, continue to develop our maintenance and compliance plan that's part of that, MS4 permit that we are obligated to comply with. Finally, sanitation. So sanitation operating revenues, and this one is unique because that one is contracted services. The bulk of it is Sunshine Disposal, Clearwater Compost, and Asotin County Landfill. And so we pay those. We have contracts with those contractors. They handle their particular jobs, and so that's why you see the operations reserves are higher because we have to have that bulk is in operations. And then the capital reserves are significantly smaller. There's some larger capital projects, I shouldn't say larger, the floor and the road into the transfer station need to be redone in the next 2 fiscal years, and so those are in there. Where we go from here, 5% rate increase, and that is almost exclusively to cover the expected rate increase from Sunshine Disposal. They updated you a couple weeks or months ago. They were proposing an 18.5% rate increase. That is obviously not in our rate, and that is why we carry those operational reserves. So when we have, for this one, we have a bump in the contract or some kind of expense that's not in the calculation, in our projection, we can absorb it. And so that's why we can carry that 5% across, absorb that. Our reserves will go down, but eventually we will catch up with that. The problem with that is our contract with Stoughton County Landfill expires at the end of next year. So we'll be negotiating with a rate increase. I've got a rough estimate from them, and it's going to go up. It's not a surprise. Everything goes up. And so that one's going to be another increase. And so we're going to roll the 5% this year and see what next year's looks like. If our reserves get too low where we can't absorb that, we're going to have to go more. If we carry it forward okay, we won't have to raise it as high as 5%. So this is the slide, and it's hard to see. This is just a standard utility bill, and I give this every year. And Mark always corrects me when he uses much more water than this bill that I put out there. And so I wanted to show everything is pretty much the same except for water consumption. And so you can see on the end, this particular customer consumed 500 cubic feet of water. An average person will use 200 to 300 cubic feet a month. So this would be like a retired couple in the winter, or somebody who doesn't irrigate, or a young couple. They don't have to be retired, but somebody who doesn't have a large family or a lot of irrigation. So I want to make it realistic, but I'm also saying if you have a garden, you're going to have more water. And so everything is extrapolated. Basically, you'll see the $39 meter fee stays the same. These consumption fees have gone up according to what was already shown. And so the difference is last month's bill was $141.16. The new rate would be $145.48. And so I think I did the math in my office. It's a net increase of about 2.5% increase. If somebody could do the math real quick here, but it's $4.26 for if you're a low water consumer. And this is I did not cheap out. This is the drainage system utility. So this is the stormwater utility, and the more expensive one, the $7.40. If you're in the orchards, you're going to be a little cheaper than that. So that's the bill comparison. And then this is the circuit breaker. You brought up the circuit breaker. So this is income based. And if you have questions, you can call our utility billing and sign up for it. I think I know there's some income requirements, and then there's some residency. I think you have to be a resident for a year to qualify for it. But you fill out the paperwork, and our ladies in utility billing can help. We do it every year, and we try and get the word out that is a program that is available. And so it is also the same. It ends up being about $3.50 more a month. So net across the board, it's about 2.5% if you're low consumer. But again, with that 10% consumption rate for water, if you're a large consumer of water, it's going to be more. So I think that, and then these are all the rates, break down all the rate tables. That is what we've got.
Councilors, any questions on stormwater or sanitation?
Mayor.
Councilor Porson?
What would it cause or do if we created a maximum amount of like usage where when they hit a certain amount, then they don't pay higher usage rate? I know it's kind of confusing, but.
Like a tiered water system, like a water rate?
Yeah.
Yeah. We're not in a position, especially tonight, to come up with that. So I think Attorney Tangano mentioned, we can't charge more. And so we have to charge for the cost of service. And so we would have to go back and do an analysis to make sure that we could justify, the tiered water system. Most tiered water systems are a way to try and reduce water consumption. So if you have no water rights or you have no water available to sell, you want to try and condition the users to use less. The interesting thing with Lewiston is we have all the water in the world. It's expensive to deliver.
Councilor Forstman?
What would it look like maybe if we gave a discounted rate to your bill if you collected water, through barrels or systems that through your gutters that goes into your lawn, certain ways that you can lessen the water usage? On top of obviously not using as much water is going to be lessened on your bill, but additional.
There are programs out there. I have not seen them regionally here, but again, where I have come from, you get rebates for low flow toilets or shower heads or those types of things. So you don't necessarily get a break on the bill, but you get a rebate. You buy something at Home Depot and you get a new toilet, you bring the receipt back and you get a rebate on it. But that's nothing I've seen around here.
Councilor Wright?
Just a comment. So I want to say raising rates with water, especially water when it's already expensive here in Lewiston, is not an easy thing to do. It's certainly not an easy thing to vote yes on when we're increasing rates. But the way that I think of it is we can either start taking care of the problems now, or we can have an even bigger problem another 10 years or 20 years from now. And for me, I'd rather address the problem now and we start getting on track to having a decent water system.
Thank you, Counselor. Is there anyone from the public that would like to provide testimony on wastewater, sanitation, or stormwater, the last three utilities that we covered? And again, I just need your name and city residence.
Yeah, Trent Morgan, 2014 Ripon. I hadn't intended to speak to this, but hey, I guess my only comment is I agree with what you're saying. We have to pay for it, right? I don't know a lot of Lewiston City residents who got a 5% pay increase this year or last year or the year before that. Maybe the people who are coming here from California, across the way, maybe they could help carry a little more of that burden, since many of us we've been here for 30 years, and maybe I'm culpable because this is my first meeting I've ever been to. Maybe I should have been here 20 years ago, right? It sounds like there should have been some freaking accountability. But here we are, and that's my only comment. We bear the burden. I'm used to paying for stormwater. I'll never have it. I'm used for paying for city sewer. I'll never have it where I live. That's okay. But it's kind of like the parking issue. How much can we bear? That's it.
Yeah, Travis Meeks, Lewiston, and yeah, I just agree because we're hitting by all sides right now with property tax increases, and now you want to come with all these fees. Everybody's getting hit in all these directions, and I think the baseline, if you didn't even turn on a light or even turn on a faucet, we're $150 a month. If you start adding your Vista bill, just your base fees, and it is affecting people because everybody in my neighborhood is not watering their grass, and it's because they can't afford it. And when people are looking here as a place to come live and all they see is dead grass, it does not look good. It's not attractive.
Thank you.
Matt Ivins, Lewiston again. A lot of people I talk to, and I'm one of them, that say, I don't have a problem with paying taxes, but I want to see something for my money. I'm tired of my rates going up, and I physically can't see things with my eyes that are happening around the city. Now, if I'm going to pay more taxes and there's something going to be built that I can say that's where my money went. I mean, our streets are atrocious. I worked for 3 years on the road, and I would have to say that Lewiston streets are probably the worst, or not the worst, rank in the top 5. And I worked in Idaho, Washington, Oregon, Nevada, California, Montana. For 3 years, I drove around these states. And I come back to Lewiston, and I'm like, what the hell are we doing? I mean, I'll pay the taxes if I see something.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Counselors, did you have questions for anyone that provided testimony today?
Mayor?
Counselor Forsman?
No, I think Counselor Klein questioned this. If we didn't go with like a 10%, but more, or even a 5% and went to like a 3, what, would that be the same items that you mentioned that would hit the capital improvements that would get hit from that?
Yeah, I mean, everything comes out of capital. I mean, when you trim rates and revenue, it comes out of capital, because as the pyramid slide, we've got to keep the lights going, we've got to keep the water flowing, and we got to pay the debt for, I'm assuming you're talking about water. Yeah, and so, you know, that list of capital projects that were approved in the budget, there would not be revenue to pay for them, so they would fall out. Yeah, we've got short-lived assets, which are, you know, the valves and things like that, that those probably need to be replaced. Annual pipeline replacement would probably go out. The recoating of the reservoirs, there's a grant that we would probably keep. Master plan update, the forklift, then the rate study that corresponds with the master plan, and then a truck. Those are the things that are in the capital. So there's not a lot of fat to cut, but that's where it would come from.
Director, are you through with your
I'm
presentation?
done.
Okay. Last chance for the public. If you have something to share with us, please let us know. Counselors, last minute questions? Counselor Wright?
Just one question on procedure, really. When we vote on the motion, is that when we can make any amendments to the fee schedule after the hearing's closed and we go to the?
Once the item is before the council, I think what we'll do is if you have fees in there that you would like to change, we'll take those one at a time and vote on them.
Ah, okay.
Okay, I don't see any more hands in there, so I'm going to close the public hearing. Okay, council, that brings us to item 5B, Resolution 2025-39, considering restating and adopting a fee schedule for services provided and regularly charged by the city of Lewiston effective October 1, 2025. This is an action item. And Director Burrow, can I ask you to take the podium just in case we have any clarifying questions as we consider any motions? Councilor Schroeder?
You need a motion to go into this, correct?
Correct.
Okay, I move to approve Resolution 2025-39.
Now
For sake of discussion, I'll second.
Moved by Councilor Schroeder, seconded by Council President Kleberg to approve Resolution 2025-39. Council, this is when you may offer an amendment, or if you have other discussions before we vote on the motion. Councilor Wright, did you have a question?
Yeah, so I'd like to make an amendment on the planning and zoning section.
I'm going to ask that we use our loud voices or
Yep.
outside voices.
Definitely.
We have folks that really want to hear what is being spoken tonight, so.
Yes, so I would like to make an amendment in the community development fees section in the planning and zoning fees regarding the appeals, so appeal of community development decision and appeal of planning and zoning commission decision hyphen equal to original filing fee. I'd like to, if the appeal is in favor of the person making the appeal, then refund 50% of the fee.
Okay, so could you read the category, the fee on the list?
That is appeal of community development decision. And just under it, though I don't see an actual fee for this, says appeal of planning and zoning commission decision hyphen equal to original filing fee.
So your motion is to add a new fee.
It would be to refund 50% of the fee if the person making the appeal wins their appeal.
Refund 50%.
Yes.
We're dropping the fee from $88.20 by half.
Yes, half it if they win the appeal.
Okay.
For amendments until we,
Huh?
we can't make any more amendments, right, until we go through the motion.
We've got a second.
Oh, apologies. Second.
Okay, it's been moved by Counselor Wright, second by Counselor Forsman, to create a new fee. Essentially what it is to refund 50% of the appeal of the community development decision. The proposed 26 fee is $88.20. So this, for the fiscal year 26, the refund amount would be $44.10. Jennifer?
If there's.
Mayor, Councilors, Jennifer Tangano, this particular procedure is set by city code, including the fee structure. So if there is a plan to amend the fee to include a procedure to allow for a refund based on the decision-making, I would recommend first that you initiate a code amendment to allow for such a refund and then address the fee associated with it. Because at this time, there is no procedure identified in city code that allows for a refund based on the decision-making of the Planning and Zoning Commission. It only provides for the setting of a fee in the instance of an appeal. While there could be consideration about whether or not to refund that, because the specific procedure for an appeal is specifically set by city code, we would want to consider an amendment to that process to allow for such decision-making.
So council, if you heard what I heard, I'm going to ask the motion maker in the second if they would withdraw their motion in the second until we can get the code changed.
I will withdraw my motion.
Second?
Yep, withdraw.
Thank you. Council, are there further amendments?
Mayor,
Councilor Klein?
I move to amend Schedule 8 water consumption to be to be a 5% raise at 0.03768555.
Second.
Okay, Counselor, you're gonna have to help me where it is on the schedule.
Yeah.
Schedule H.
Oh, H, I thought you said
H.
8, and I didn't find one. Okay.
Schedule H. Under water consumption.
The very first fee under Schedule H. All of the slides here.
Okay, Schedule H, utility fees. Page 23. Page 23, if you're following along. Yeah, there we go.
Okay.
Yeah, okay, Counselor, help me again, where are we at?
Okay, we're at the water consumption.
Okay. Like to change that to what?
0.0376855, and that is a 5%.
0.0376855?
3 5s.
3 5s? Okay. Does the second agree, understand that? Counselor Spickmeyer?
Second, yeah.
Okay, are we paying attention out there, Shannon and directors? Motion is by Counselor Klein, second by Counselor Spickmeyer to reduce the proposed FY 2026 increase down to 0.0376855. Clerk Rocky, did you capture that?
And my math is right?
5%.
What's the percentage increase?
5.
5, okay, for Elaine too, it's a 5% increase.
Instead of a 10.
Okay, Counselor, are we clear on the motion? Okay. Those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed?
Nay.
Motion carries. Restated, the FY 25 fee is 0.035891 as shown on page 23, and that will be increased to 0.0376855
Decreased.
from the FY 25.
Oh, sorry, I'm sorry. Yes.
Okay, are there other amendments? Councilor Spickmeyer?
I'd like to make a motion to change the wastewater service fee for single residents, including mobile homes on local individual lots, and single residents, including mobile homes located on individual lots, to remain the same, no change.
Okay, Councilor, did you get me the
Page 25.
Page 25. Okay. And what's the line on that? Remain at, what's the dollar amount, please? What's the dollar amount you want to leave it at?
5209.
What's the dollar amount that you want to leave it at?
Leave it at the first one was 5209 and the other one 3907.
Okay, is there a second on that? Did I miss it?
Second.
So page 25, the top two rates there, for those following along. Been moved by Councilor Spickmeyer, second by Council President Kleberg, to leave FY 2025 fees, the rates the same for FY 2026 for the single residences, including mobile homes located in individual lots, $52.09. FY 26 and single residences, including mobile homes located on individual lots under the Utility Assistance Program, to leave those at $39.07 for FY 26. Those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
Nay.
Motion carries. Are there further amendments, please? Or amendments? I will go back to the main motion to approve Resolution 2025-39 that was moved by Councilor Schroeder, seconded by Council President Clayburgh. Clerk Brocky?
Council President Kleber,
Aye.
Councilor Wright,
Aye.
Councilor Forsman,
Aye.
Councilor Schroeder,
Aye.
Councilor Klein,
Aye.
Councilor Spiegelmeier.
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you, Council. Thank you, Clerk Brocky. Council, next we move to the consent agenda, Roman numeral 6. All items on the consent agenda are considered routine by the council and will be enacted by one motion. There will be no separate discussion on these issues unless the councilor so requests, in which case the item will be removed from the consent agenda and considered on the active agenda under items moved from the consent agenda.
Yeah.
Councilor Klein?
I move to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Second. Moved by Councilor Klein, second by Councilor Schroeder to approve the consent agenda. Those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Councilor Wright?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would make a motion to remove items B and C from the agenda. On the active agenda. Excuse me.
It's been moved by Councilor Wright, seconded by Councilor Spiegelmeier to remove from the active agenda items B. Councilor Wright, would you like to speak to your motion?
Yes, this was based on guidance from the city.
Have requested that. Council, do you have any further questions? Items will be removed. Thank you, Councilor Wright. Council, we have,
Mayor, did you have a vote on that matter? There was a motion and a second, but I didn't hear a vote.
okay, well, if I didn't do that,
It's a long day.
those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carries, we got one now. Thank you, Jeff. Council, we now have before us, under the active agenda, Roman numeral 7, item A, resolution 2025-44, considering approving a revised City of Lewiston personnel policy. This is an action item. We have our Human Resources Director with us here tonight, Nikki Province. Director Province, welcome. Please introduce yourself for the record. The floor is yours. Thank you.
Yes, hi, Council. Nikki Province, HR Director. In front of you, you have both a redlined copy and a clean copy of changes made to the personnel policy. This is something we do annually. Leadership has been working together over the last couple months to modify any policies that aren't quite working or that need improvement. I've listed the substantial changes on your agenda item history sheet. I do want to point out that since submitting this, we found just 2 numerical errors. The glossary is missing section 507, and 1505 and 1506 should be reflected instead of 1507 and 1505 on the very last page. So those will be corrected. And so I just stand for any questions that you might have about the modifications made.
Thank you, Director. Council, questions?
Yes.
Councilor Wright?
Yes, under, I'm gonna try and find the page number for you here on this document. So page 61, under service restoration rules for eligible employees. Said break-in service is shorter than the previous employment service. And I was just curious if you think that could cause a challenge down the road? Should we list some type of statement of, and should not exceed X amount of time? So if a person worked here 10 years and then they were gone for 10 years or 9 years and then they were rehired, they would get, my understanding is their seniority and
The real issue would be their leave accrual. So we have a tiered leave accrual earning, so like 1 to 4, 5 to 10, 10 to 15, and 15 to 20. So if somebody was here for 10 years and they've left and come back, part of that would be restoring the level at which they were receiving their vacation accruals.
yeah.
And so I think what it's trying to say is that if you're gone longer than the time that you spent here, then you would basically start over.
Right.
Is that okay?
Yeah, so what I'm asking, is the intent to, I'm just making sure that we're not missing a sentence around, but it can't exceed this amount of time that you've been gone. But, but if you've been gone 5 years, then you don't qualify for this, even if, you worked here for 10 years.
It's your policy. So if you'd like me to add a clarifying sentence, I can,
But the intent was for that, not
yeah.
no limit at all. It's just however long they've worked here.
We've had a number of employees who, use our Shannon Grow, our community development director, who may have left for several years but was here 15 years. And so this would allow us the ability to restore her back to where she was versus starting like a brand new employee. It's basically acknowledging those years that they worked, but we didn't set a limit on how long you have to be gone before you come back, and that's reset. So it's your policy. If you want me to add a clarifying sentence, I can most certainly do that.
No, I was just curious about the intent there. Thanks.
Yeah, we didn't really acknowledge any length of time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Councilor Klein.
Can I just add something to that, just as information? I know like with SEL, they have in their personnel policy that anything like, as long as you come back within 5 years, then you get to be 100% vested if you were a vested employee. And so it kind of incentivizes bringing back old employees that may have been great employees but left. And if they've already worked for you before previously, typically they already have the knowledge and stuff that you don't have to rebuild back into an employee. So.
Yeah, I mean, we've had several employees who've worked for us for 10, maybe even longer years. They leave for 3 and they come back. It's just acknowledging that time previously spent. But had they been gone 15 years, where the length of time is much greater than the time they actually worked here, they would then start over their seniority and accruals from the beginning. And we modified that mostly because the previous wording didn't quite work right. So.
Councilors, you have resolution 2025-44 before you. Councilor Spickelmeyer.
Motion to approve resolution 2025-44.
Second.
Been moved by Councilor Spickelmeyer, seconded by Councilor Schroeder to approve resolution 2025-44. Clerk Brockey.
Council President Kleber,
Aye.
Councilor Wright,
Aye.
Councilor Forsman. Aye. Councilor Schroeder,
Aye.
Councilor Klein,
Aye.
Councilor Spickelmeyer.
Aye.
Thank you, Council. Thank you, Director Province. Council, next up, we have item D, resolution 2025-37, considering authorizing the mayor to sign all applications, funding agreements, and other documents related to the Idaho Department of Environmental Quality Drinking Water Planning Grant. This is an action item. Council President Kleberg,
Make a motion to approve Resolution 2025-37.
Second.
by Council President Kleberg, second by Councilor Schroeder to approve Resolution 2025-30. Clerk Rocky,
Council President Kleber,
Aye.
Councilor Wright,
Aye.
Councilor Forsman,
Aye.
Councilor Schroeder,
Aye.
Councilor Klein,
Aye.
Councilor Spiegelmeier.
Aye.
passes. Thank you, Council. Thank you, Clerk Rocky. Next up, we have item E, Resolution 2025-43, considering declaring various items of city property surplus and providing for the public auction of said surplus property. This is an action item. Councilor Schroeder,
I move to approve Resolution 2025-43.
Second.
moved by Councilor Schroeder, second by Councilor Wright to approve Resolution 2025-43. Clerk Rocky,
Council President Kleber,
Aye.
Councilor Wright,
Aye.
Councilor Forsman,
Aye.
Councilor Schroeder,
Aye.
Councilor Klein,
Aye.
Councilor Spiegelmeier.
Aye.
motion carries. Thank you, Council. Thank you, Clerk Rocky. Next up, item F, Resolution 2025-40, considering a parking agreement between Lewis Clark State College and the City of Lewiston to establish a parking permit-based parking program along the south side of 7th Avenue, the east side of 6th Street in several areas, a section on the west side of 6th Street across from the President's Home, and a few spots on 8th and 9th Avenues. Attached as Exhibit A to the parking agreement. This is an action item. We have our city attorney, Ms. Jennifer Tangano, here tonight. Jennifer, welcome. Please introduce yourself for the record.
Thank you, Mayor, council members. My name is Jennifer Tangano, city attorney, and I'm here to speak on the parking agreement with LCSC. Also, Vice President Andy Hansen is also here in case the council had any questions related to this parking agreement. And to clarify, I've seen public comments that the city has received and is included, I think, with the packet. And I wanted to kind of dispel some misconceptions about this particular agreement. This agreement is intended only to operate within specific hours. So adjusting for seasonal changes, this program is not intended to go late into the evening. It's intended to go until 5 p.m. While 5 p.m. in some parts of the year is nighttime, it's not intended to go past 5 p.m. Additionally, this agreement for the most part is Monday through Friday during school times. And so it's not intended to go on the weekends. There's also an exception for special events where parking will not be enforced for that particular area. And so it won't affect operations for the church on Sundays or anything of that nature. Also, it's not intended to cover properties that are in front of residential houses. The area that the parking enforcement will be done at are specifically on the parking areas immediately adjacent to LCSC's properties, and areas where it is the LCSC side of the street, or it's areas where LCSC is on both sides of the street. So it's not intended to be in front of any residential properties or any private properties. It's specifically in front of LCSC's properties. Generally speaking, this is an intergovernmental agreement. The city was approached by the college to entertain this idea of the parking agreement to allow for LCSC to better enforce their parking regulations adjacent to their property. Right now, they govern the property within their property boundaries. However, they've been having difficulty, and the neighborhoods have been having difficulty with people choosing not to buy a parking pass and just parking immediately adjacent to the university instead. Other universities and cities, they do similar agreements. There was comment received today about the University of Idaho and the streets being more within the footprint. It should be of note, those are actually city streets, a majority of them, not all of them. I think based on the network, it's about 3.6 miles of city streets that are wholly within the footprint of the University of Idaho. It does include some residential areas because you do have some residences that are there on the backside of the university, closer to Nut First Drive where the fraternities are at. There are some private residential areas back there that are often rented to students. Different with some of those other agreements, though, is they also have a separate maintenance agreement where the university maintains those streets and then the city pays for that maintenance to the university. Here, this is just the proposal for a parking agreement. As it stands, I believe it's just a 2 years that we've contemplated for the time being, with the opportunity to continue to extend the agreement. That's why the payment terms here, in consideration for this, the university will be paying the portion of the revenues generated just from those parking areas, 25% to the city for the first year and 30% to the city for the second year. Thereafter, the parties will come back together and figure out whether or not this is a viable program, how it's working, and so forth. Additionally, this particular agreement, the city will continue to enforce city regulations in these areas. The only thing that the city is not going to enforce is the parking permit restrictions. Those will continue to be maintained by the university. They will just be enforcing those areas along those boundary areas where previously they are only limited to within their property boundaries. The city does have other areas throughout town where free parking is provided for university students, such as in the D Street Municipal Parking Lot. There are residence hall students that live downtown, have the ability to get a parking permit. At this time, there's no cost for that, and that's an area that LCSC patrols at night for the safety of the students. And that program has been working well. There's also, the normal hill parking regulations for residential permits, and that's an area where, if the city needs to look back and evaluate expanding that, we have processes in place where residents can petition the city for that, and that could be something that we entertain for the sake of addressing the residents' concerns there. To the extent that this is double taxation, there seems to be a misconception. Every Lewiston resident is also a resident of Nez Perce County. So to the extent that we would accept all Nez Perce County residents, we would effectively be exempting every Lewiston resident in addition to every resident of Nez Perce County to allow them the opportunity to park on LCSC's campuses and in this parking area. To the extent that we're able to add something that's only limited to this particular area, that doesn't take into consideration that when you register a vehicle, you don't have to change your license plate if you're from out of county. Specifically, I have a 1L license plate because I moved from Latah County, but I am registered here in Nez Perce County because I live in Lewiston. So I pay Lewiston taxes, Nez Perce County taxes, but my license plate says 1L. So under that program, I would not be able to qualify for that because even as a Nez Perce County resident, I don't have a N license plate, even though it's registered and I pay all those taxes. I wasn't required to actually change my license plate when I moved down here. So that's just another thing to consider, that if you base it just on the license plate itself, you're not necessarily capturing those residents that are actually paying taxes that might have a different county license plate. So, and also it's not going towards the road maintenance itself. It's going towards the parking program that's being enforced by LCSC. Not anything related to the maintenance of the roadways. So that will be completely separate. Other than that, this particular agreement, like I said, is an intergovernmental agreement between the city and the college. It doesn't actually convey any other responsibilities other than parking enforcement from the city to LCSC. The city will continue to maintain those areas. It does allow the opportunity for LCSC to add improvements to those areas, such as markings, crosswalk markings, and signs. At the end of the contract, LCSC has the opportunity to remove those improvements, or they could dedicate them to the city for the city to continue to maintain. The first year of the contract cost envisions them using some of those revenues to make those improvements. That's why there's a first year reduction versus the second year. And then either party can terminate this agreement by providing notice 1 year in advance. And that is just on the basis so that LCSC can make appropriate planning in their programming. If we were to agree to this agreement, we would have to notify them no later than June 1st in the year prior to the termination date. So they would have the opportunity to have the full calendar year, and we would be going into the second year by the time that we would have to provide them notice. So if we wanted to terminate this agreement, we would provide them notice on June 1st of next year, and then it would terminate it at the end of the 2027 calendar or school year. So they would have the rest of this year, and then they would have the rest of next year, and then the agreement would be able to be terminated. So the city should take that into consideration. But it may be modified by any party upon mutual agreement, and they're not binding unless approved by the governing bodies of both. And so even if one party wanted a modification, we would have the opportunity, or either side would have the opportunity to agree or not agree. And that's substantively, that's the details on this particular contract. As I mentioned, there is a parking map that's included in here. If you see the red lines that are on the map, I don't have a slide for this, but those represent the specific areas where the parking spots will be. In the areas where there are residences on the other side, those residences are not actually encompassed by this agreement. They maintain their ability to park there, and it's not going to be regulated by a parking permit. It's only the sides that immediately abut LCSC's property, whether it's on both sides where like the president's house is at, and they have a couple of parking lots by the ball fields, and then they have their parking lots too. And so it's just those particular areas that is covered by this particular agreement where there's parking available. And I stand for questions.
For Council President Kleberg.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So what's driving this? Well, maybe I'll ask Dr. Hanson. Sure. The reason why I'm asking is because I drive by the campus. Now that I'm retired, I can drive by there at all hours of the day. And the 4th Street parking lot where the rec center is, you know, they rent the rafts and stuff like that. There's typically maybe a dozen rigs in there. You got a whole parking lot there, and the same one that's directly to the north, if you will, between 7th and 11th. So it seems like there's a lot of parking already available.
Dr. Hanson, can you introduce yourself for the record, please?
Certainly. My name is Andrew Hanson. I'm the Senior Vice President and Vice President for Student Affairs at Lewis Clark State College, resident of Lewiston, Idaho. Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council, I'm happy to address that question. You have actually identified the primary driver. We are trying to encourage more people to use those parking lots. And what we find is that when they are not having to pay for parking along the perimeter, that's exactly what they're going to be gravitating toward. And we have fielded questions from neighbors who get upset about students, faculty, and staff parking in front of their homes. So our logic is that rather than sending people out into the neighborhoods to park, that by doing this, they're paying for those permits anyway, and they will take greater advantage of those parking lots, which are often more convenient to get to our major classroom buildings. The other driver behind this is trying to maintain an increasingly expensive 24/7 security system on campus, and that includes 24/7 patrols. One of the primary funding sources for that is parking fee generation, and by expanding the number of parking slots and the number of permits sold, we will be able to keep the cost of those permits at a reasonable level. Those are our two primary motives. I do want to say quickly, I want to correct one thing that was said. We do charge students for the permits that they use on the D Street parking lot. I hope that answers your question.
That's fine, thanks.
Thank you.
Dr. Hanson, let's see if other council members, Councilor Wright, anybody have a question for Dr. Hanson?
I do.
Councilor Wright,
Yeah.
please.
So along the similar lines, but why don't you just charge every student the cost of the permit that can't get some qualification of, no, they're just online, so they don't have to do it? But all your students that come to campus, why don't you just make them, require them all to have a permit?
That is actually an option that has been pursued. Some of us will remember when the cost of a parking permit at LC State, and this is in very recent history, was $10. It is now $95 for a year. So we are increasing the cost of those parking permits, but we want to do that, and I think a point was made earlier about inflation and how quickly do you escalate costs like that. We want to do it steadily so that we can maintain and afford our security system, but we don't want to do it in such an overwhelming way as to make it inaccessible to our students. So it's a great question. Thank you.
Counselor Forsman?
So if I'm understanding correctly, we think it's actually going to deter people from parking in front of people's houses and not allowing the homeowners to be closer to their driveways, say if they didn't have.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, that is our logic. That is what we are attempting to do with this. But as has been stated, it is our intention to evaluate this. If we learn that the opposite has occurred, which is some of the fears, then we will revisit the agreement, we'll revisit the structure of the program, and try to address that. Because we are committed, truly, we are committed to being good neighbors. We've heard the church's concerns, for example, and I can assure you that as the church has needs during the week, for special events or so forth, we're ready to hear those things and again be good neighbors, not enforce parking if they have a special need along that 6th Street corridor. We're flexible for a variety of reasons, but we do think this is going to be a way to drive more people into our parking lots so that as Councilman Kleberg pointed out, he will not be driving by and seeing a lot of empty spaces. He will see that people who have paid for the permit are going to gravitate toward the lots more than they do now.
Counselor Forsman?
What about, I don't know the area, I don't live in that area, so I don't, I guess, have the struggles, but if you live in the area or you have a hard time finding parking and now the people that live in that area can't park over there without having to pay a fee, what are we to do to address that concern?
Well, if that is an actual concern, then we'll obviously want to have a dialogue with those neighbors to see if we can find a solution. I suspect that in the hours of parking enforcement that we're talking about, the vast majority of the parking spots that are in play are already being used by students, faculty, and staff, and they're not paying anything to use them.
Mayor, councilors, just for everyone's benefit, I did pull up the map that's on the publicly available version of the agreement. And as you can see, these red lines here along the north end and along the east side of this property, those red lines, those indicate the areas where the spots are proposed that the city would be allowing for LCSC to regulate. And as you can see, starting down at the bottom, this right here is LCSC parking. There is, this is LCSC property. This is where the 14 spots would go. It's bordered on both sides by the property. Same here. There's another LCSC parking lot right here. And again, LCSC is on both sides of the street, and it would cover the parking here. And then it would cover one spot on the south side and one spot on the north side right here, where again, LCSC is on both sides of the property. I believe the church is right in this corner right here too. Farther north.
There in the north.
So this is the president's house, and then there would be the 6 spots here and 13 spots here, as well as 10 spots on this side of the street right here. And then the 17 spots here, and then the 48 spots along the, my vision's not that well. The 48 spots right here. We're not proposing anything on this side of the street or on this side along the north side of the street, and nothing beyond what's being indicated at this time, because those are not bounded by LCSC on the side of the street that's proposed to be regulated. So it would fall outside of this agreement. And my understanding too, because I do drive by this myself, is that there is parking available on both sides of the street. It's just this side of the street along here is primarily residential in nature. And same thing around back in these areas. And then just for clarification too, some of these streets that do go through LCSE are actually city rights of way and city streets. They're just wholly within that footprint. And those are just different things to take into consideration, is that there are still public rights of way within this footprint, that as a part of pursuing this, we're still recognizing that these are city rights of way owned and maintained by the city, but it doesn't affect the maintenance of those streets. Those will continue to be maintained, and there will still be police enforcement of city code violations in those areas. Now, we do have a community resource officer that does patrol those areas and responds to violations, but we also have LPD that does too. But when it comes down to city resources, we don't have that many police resources that we have someone that is constantly there ticketing all the violations, and it's a balancing of priorities. This allows some additional enforcement from LCSC in these particular areas to address some of the parking concerns associated with the student, staff, and faculty parking lot.
Counselor Wright?
Yeah. So I'm just trying to remember my state back when I was in college. Up at U of I got the cheapest permit, which was, I think, the green zone or something, where I'm a mile away or close to a mile from most of the buildings. And I mean, the walk didn't deter me from spending less money when I had no money and was in college. So are these street lots, I guess the first thing, because this isn't a very big campus, so you already don't have to walk very far. But these street spots, are they cheaper than the parking? Will they be cheaper than the parking lots, or are they going to cost the same?
That's going to be a question for Mr. Hanson. I don't have any knowledge about the difference in prices of the LCSC's parking permits.
Apologize, I should have asked that sooner.
It's all right. It's not a big walk to come up here either. Mr. Mayor, members of the council, right now, the rate is the same. It's flat for what we would anticipate for perimeter parking as well as the parking lots. We have begun to explore what a differential parking rate might look like, but for the ease of implementation, we decided that for now, it would be a standard rate.
Gotcha, I see. Yeah, I mean, if it was cheaper or half the price, which I don't want to dictate your pricing or anything like that, but you know, if the lesser parking spots were less money, then I could maybe see the logic behind the incentive of, if we make these permitted, we think people will park in the parking lots or will, buy the permit. But if it's the same cost, I might just park a block away if I'm trying to think, how was it for me when I was in college? I might just go a block further down the street.
Counselor
I don't know.
Schroeder?
Thank you. Thanks.
Counselor Schroeder?
Thank you, Mr. Hanson. This has a 2-year life to it, this agreement.
Yes.
And are you intending to bring this back to the public? Because there seemed to be a lot of interest in it before that 2 years is up, so that they can weigh in again?
Well, most certainly, if you enter into this partnership, in partnership with the city, we would bring this to the fore as frequently as needed.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Mayor, Counselor Schroeder, to address the question about a public hearing, traditionally these types of agreements aren't required by Idaho code to have a public hearing, and the city typically only has a public hearing for those matters that are required by Idaho code. However, there's always the opportunity to provide public comment on anything that the city is doing, any concerns of the individuals, at every council meeting. And to the extent that no public hearing is required, public comment is the appropriate time to address those concerns and to bring up those issues. As you know from experience, it's not always an often used process because there's always the assumption that you have to have a public hearing in order to accept public comment on a matter. However, it's actually the opposite. We can accept public comment on anything except for when a public hearing is required, in which case the public comments have to be within the public hearing. Certain matters require the council to not even consider anything that's said outside of the public hearing. So for these types of intergovernmental agreements, public comment at any time throughout the life of the contract is available for people to comment on it. They can submit comments on electronically via email. They can reach out to the city councilors. They can reach out to the mayor. They can reach out to Public Works, any department they can reach out to and comment on, and the city can look at and consider those comments. It's only when a public hearing is required by Idaho code that we cannot accept comments outside of that public hearing, except for to the extent that it will be introduced at the public hearing.
Thank you.
Councilor Forsman?
How, and I don't know obviously your guys' process, but how was the information, or was it spread to the surrounding neighborhoods, homeowners? So that, because it seems like there was a lot of people that weren't aware that we were going to be discussing this.
We did not. We did not reach out to the neighbors in advance of approaching the city about this agreement.
Counselor Spicklemeyer?
So, for city attorney question. So if this is approved, what would stop other businesses or large housing development from wanting to do the same thing on a city street?
There's nothing that stops them from wanting to do it. As far as whether or not the city could implement the program is different. Here, LCSC is a state-created educational institution, so they are a state agency and they are afforded the privileges of that. So that's why this is an intergovernmental agreement. Idaho code allows for the city to enter into agreements to share certain resources, such as the policing of city streets, for example. It would even potentially allow for us to delegate even maintenance of the roadways. So we have the ability to enter into these contracts that we wouldn't necessarily have the same ability to enter into such a contract with a private party, because we would have to evaluate the public purpose for such an agreement when it's addressed with a private individual.
Okay, counselors, do you have further comments or questions? Council President Claiborne? Would you like a motion? Motion's in order. Make a motion to approve Resolution 2025-40. Oh, everybody just jump up.
I'll second it.
Been moved by Council President Kleberg, seconded by Councilor Spicklemeyer, to approve Resolution 2025-40. Is there further discussion?
Mayor.
Councilor Forsman?
I think I can't get behind it because I'm concerned, for one, that we didn't get a lot of time for those that live in the surrounding area to be able to express concerns, thoughts, worries, as well as 2 years seems like a long time for if things aren't going well. To me, like if it was like a 6 months to a year, and then the homeowners can say, people are parking in front of my house, hasn't helped anything. that would make more sense to me. I'm just worried we're gonna be jumping to this, thinking this is the solution, and then now we're in a 2-year problem where homeowners are now getting stuck with people constantly parking in front of their houses. And that might not happen. I don't think this gives us a lot of wiggle room, and that's my concern with this agreement.
Further comments? Clerk Brockie?
Council President Kleberg,
Aye.
Councilor Wright,
Nay.
Councilor Forsman,
Okay?
Councilor Schroeder,
Hey.
Councilor Klein,
Nay.
Councilor Spiegelmeier.
Nay.
Fails. Counselors, thank you, Dr. Hanson. Counselor, we next move to item G, Resolution 2025-42, considering approving the proposed lease agreement between the Lewiston Espers County Regional Airport Authority and the City of Lewiston for the Bryden Canyon Golf Course. This is an action item. And we have our city attorney with us, Jennifer Tangano. Jennifer, please, welcome.
Thank you, Mayor, councilors. The city, and this is a little bit of a history because I know this is always the question that is asked of a lot of people, but why does the city have to pay for a lease with Bryden Canyon Golf Course when the city owns the property? The Bryden Canyon Golf Course is included within the footprint of the airport property. As a result, the airport is required by FAA regulations to use all of their property for revenue generation. They have aeronautical areas, they have non-aeronautical areas, and they have areas that are just kind of kept and not used for any kind of revenue generation like the airstrip. As a part of developing their airport improvement plan, they have to figure out what areas are revenue generating areas. And under FAA regulations, they have to at least get fair market value for commercial non-aeronautical properties. Bryden Canyon Golf Course is one of those areas that's been identified for non-aeronautical revenue generation. While the property was obtained through a Land and Water Conservation Fund grant that requires it to use for public recreational purposes, it's also encumbered with those FAA regulations. As a part of those FAA regulations, the city is required to lease back its property because it is included with the airport footprint. So as a part of that, the city and the airport authority have historically had less than fair market lease rates. However, as changes in federal law go on, the FAA has sent notices to the airport authority that they have to lease to the city the property at fair market value. About 2 years ago, the airport authority had an evaluation done on the property, and it's just taken this amount of time to get that lease agreement updated and reviewed by both parties to reflect that fair market value rate. So the lease that is before you is an updated lease that provides for a new lease rate based on fair market value, and it includes a 3% increase annually for each subsequent year. That way, we're staying in line with inflation and in compliance with FAA regulations that we continue to lease it at fair market value. For the most part, the remainder of the terms remain the same. There is a provision in that agreement that in the event that it's terminated between the city and the airport authority, that the airport authority has the option to continue with the Courseco contract because we do have to maintain that agreement to the extent that we have a continuing contractual obligation with them for management. There's also a provision in there that requires the airport that in the event that they cease to use that property for land, for the purposes for which it was acquired under the Land Water Conservation Fund grant, that they would be responsible for any financial consequences for doing so, including environmental assessments and other things of that nature, because even as the property owners, the city would traditionally still be liable for it, but for it being used for airport purposes. So that puts that responsibility onto the airport authority itself. That's currently in our contract, but that's just something that is important to highlight, is that we continue to maintain that provision across our different leases, because in the past, they have earmarked it for runway expansion. So the airport authority would be responsible for any changes in use associated with that particular property. I don't think that that's currently in their plan anymore, but it's something that we, as the grant receiver for that property with that federal encumbrance, needs to continually maintain to the best of our ability. Time for questions.
Thank you, Jennifer. Council questions? Council Spickelmeyer?
Thank you. So it's a comment, I guess I have, is that, so they're saying that if that airport wasn't there, all nice and green, that it'd be worth $48,000 a year? It isn't, wouldn't even be good grazing land.
It's not $48,000. I think it's $82,000 for the fair market value, but it's assessed as a golf course. So it's not assessed as bare grazing land. The airport property is based on the fair market value of golf course lands.
Even though the city did all the improvements.
Yes, and that's because of the FAA regulations that require them to obtain fair market value for that property as it is.
Mayor?
Counselor, did you have a follow-up?
I did not.
Counselor Forsman?
Ruth, I think you touched on this a little bit, but I just want to make sure I understand. So what would happen if we said we don't want to go into this and we don't agree with the amount increase?
To the extent that you don't want to go into it, we would have to look at the current lease agreement to determine what the termination provisions would be. I know as far as the current agreement that's being proposed to you, earlier today, I would say that we're presenting this to you to have the airport authority review. The airport authority had a special meeting today, and they have approved this agreement. So even though they have approved it, there's no obligation on the city to also approve it. However, if the intent is not to approve it and to proceed with potential termination, we would have to make sure that we review whatever those contractual provisions are related to the current agreement and Course Co. before proceeding that way.
Counselor Wright?
I have just a question, and if we don't have the answer, that's okay. But we give money, or we invest money into the airport. We're gonna do that again this year. And then they're charging us this lease. Couldn't we just take that technically out of what invest in the airport? The difference, so to speak?
Without providing legal advice to the city council has the option to provide or not provide financial resources to the airport as it is able to and is appropriated.
Thank you.
Sorry, Mayor, excuse me. If we didn't go into this agreement, what happens to the airport? Does this hurt the airport? Is it just the FFA? Because they're kind of, I know they're kind of different, right? The FFA versus the Airport Authority Board itself, but.
Well, the FAA regulates the airport authority and it regulates the city to the extent that we are the airport sponsor. But it would affect them to the extent that this would be a loss of revenue for them unless they were able to find another private party that would be willing to lease this. However, they would still have the Land and Water Conservation Fund obligation associated with the property. So it would be a potential encumbrance on the property.
Council President Kleber?
And since the property was developed using land and water conservation funds, I think we have our Parks and Rec director here. That money, if it ceased to be a golf course, that money would have to be paid back at current day value by the city.
Not necessarily. To the extent that it's continued to use for the purposes for which the grant funds were provided.
Correct.
Counselor Klein?
I just wanted to clarify. So if we don't approve this, we no longer have a lease and we no longer have a golf course.
We still have a lease. We have an existing lease that we have currently. It's out of date to the extent that there was a request at the beginning of this fiscal year to update the lease agreement. And that it has taken this amount of time to get it approved. So if the city were not to approve this agreement, I would foresee either receiving or sending out a notice of termination.
Counselor Forsman?
Just for clarity's sake, I think what Counselor Kleberg was saying is if we didn't approve this lease and we weren't, it would probably then not be used as a golf course. And then if that case, then we would be obligated to pay back that bond.
Land and Water Conservation Fund.
We gotta pay it back, the land and water conservation from the grant. I don't know, if we didn't approve this lease, would it be like, now we're not using this as a golf course?
To the extent, again, of not providing legal advice in this particular forum, the property could still be used as a golf course for public purposes. The extent for which that would be required by the city or the airport authority as another public entity, that legal analysis hasn't been performed because that was not what was put before the city attorney's office.
Counselor Forsman?
I mean, I personally would like, not to say that I don't want to go into lease, outright say I don't want to go into a lease, but I also think historically we've kind of just been given this option and this is your way you take. I would like to explore other avenues and other ways that we can make this less muddy. I think this is for the taxpayers as well as just an interesting that we have, and the way that, as Counselor Wright said, we pay them, but then yet we pay them for the property, but then we give them money to maintain their property, and it's very process. So I don't know if there's different ways that we can look into how to fund or how to run the golf course without causing, obviously, the airport to go under or to lose the golf course altogether. But I wouldn't mind looking at other avenues. As you said, like, you weren't tasked with that, and then maybe postponing this and allowing us to do a little more digging.
So to the extent, as far as the value, the options before the city would be to have a separate land evaluation done and have the property reassessed for what fair market value would be. Beyond that, because it's a commercial non-aeronautical property, it has to be ran under FAA regulations at fair market value. So if our evaluation came back as the same amount, then the city would not have any other option if it were to continue the lease to pay that particular amount. At which case it would essentially be a battle of the valuations, whose evaluation is more accurate. And that would be at a cost to the city because we would have to pay for that, and that's not funds that we could recoup through the agreement itself. To the extent that you're doing so to not further the contract, that's a different question, and that's a different legal analysis as far as options for the city.
Council President Kleberg?
I just offer that I think the use of that land as a golf course, in the way it's being run right now, since we got new operators up there, things have improved. Provides a lot of recreation for a lot of people in this town. And if any counselor in here wants to have this room full for a change, instead of not having especially like during a budget session, just having a few people show up when, we got empty seats all over the place. You want to see it full, let's go ahead and cancel that contract. They'll have all of them in here. I just think it'd be a mistake at this point in time. Not because I enjoy golfing. Sometimes.
Counselor Wright,
I'd make a motion to approve resolution 2025-42.
Second.
moved by Counselor Wright, seconded by Council President Kleberg to approve Resolution 2025-42. Clerk Rocky.
Council President Kleberg,
Aye.
Councilor Wright,
Aye.
Councilor Forsman,
Aye.
Councilor Schroeder,
Aye.
Councilor Klein,
Aye.
Councilor Spickelmeyer.
Nay.
Carries. Thank you, Council. Next, we move to Roman numeral 9, unfinished new business. Item A, City Councilor comments. Comments shall not be related to an item currently before the City Council or an item that may come before the City Council in the foreseeable future. It shall be limited to comments, not discussion. Councilors? Council President Kleberg?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a brief comment. I want to apologize to the council, and I have apologized to the mayor and to the taxpayers for my lack of attendance at the last reading of the budget. Unfortunately, I missed my connection flight from Chicago O'Hare to Lewiston, and I spent the night in Salt Lake. Kind of a crappy hotel that didn't have much going on the internet to where I could use my iPad, call in on the Zoom. So that was the explanation for my absence. But I'll let it happen again.
Council President? Councilor Horstman?
I just want to thank those that reached out to me, the other council members. It's really important that you guys are reaching out and emailing. Emailing is the best for me, honestly. I'm able to get answers back to you easier that way. Public comment obviously is great, but sometimes I'm not able to get your email to write back on if you had questions or, so if you come up here and you publicly speak, but you don't feel like you're getting heard or your questions aren't getting answered, please email one of the counselors and we can make sure we're answering those lingering questions that you might have and make sure that you are being heard. For public comment is your time to express your concerns, so we don't have a discussion back and forth. So if you feel like you needed that, to please, I encourage you to email your council members or your mayor, call, whatever you need. That's what we should all be here for, so that you guys can get those answers or concerns spread out. And if you wanted to go to all the counselors, you can either individually add us, or you can send it to Tanya Brock, our city clerk, and she will forward them on to all the council members so that we all have the same information. Thanks for coming.
Other council comments? Boards and commissions, liaison updates? Your comments? I've got a couple of them here. I think Jenny's can help. Picture here for those that might be able to see it. So, councilors, I want to share this with you and the public. Again, just to kind of show off one of the great things that we do as a city. And this is from our utility billing department. And I'm going to read a statement from you. You can look at the screen, and those at home can look at that. As postage rates continue to rise, the cost of mailing paper utility statements grows as well. To help manage these costs and provide more convenience, City offers email statements as an option. Over the last 5 years, first-class postage has increased from 55 cents to 78 cents. Even with the city's discounted bulk cash certified mailing rates, costs have still risen by more than 20% during the same period. Making the switch is simple. Complete the form on the back of your mailed statement, email utility billing at ub@cityoflewiston.org, or call 208-746-3671, extension 0, which is shown on the screen there. In addition, the city recently updated its online payment system, which is safe, secure, and free to use. With it, you can set up auto pay, pick your draft date, or make one-time guest payment. It also works for businesses, tenants, and property managers. For those without internet access, the utility billing division offers a 24/7 phone payment line at 1-833-761-5606. Thank you for considering these efforts to reduce mailing expenses and improve convenience services. Utility billing staff will be happy to help. So I just want to share that with you because we're taking our business very serious, and we find ways that we can cut every dollar out of our budget. So if you're sitting out in the audience, I can show you where we save money. We're going to continue to save money, but I want to take my hat off to utility billing for the work that they've done. Amy's department and finance, they work very, very hard for us, and they're doing a great job. Those are my first comments. My second comment is I'd like to also thank the candidates that showed up tonight and that stuck around with us. I appreciate your interest. And then I'd also like to thank our Senior Vice President, President of Student Affairs, Andy Hansen, for joining us tonight. We appreciate having you here in the audience. Item D, agenda topics. Counselors, a couple of you contacted me about some topics, and I placed them on the October work session, so you will see those come up. That moves us to Roman numeral 9, adjournment.
So moved.
Second.
Been moved by Council President Kleberg, seconded by Councilor Schroeder to adjourn. Those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We are adjourned. Thank you.